process of dream. We are transmitting from the year 1999.
In a world where nostalgia rages across the land, where everyone and their mother has a podcast, where there's still a movie trailer guy who says, in a world, three friends revisit films, shows, and games that molded them as they search for answers to life, the universe, and everything in between. Settle in and join us for Screen Refresh.
Welcome to a very special episode of Screen Refresh. As you know, Halloween is around the corner, and it happens to be the 1-year anniversary of us starting the show. So we wanted to put together something a little special for the occasion. I'm your host, Tim, and I'm joined by my co-hosts, Dean and Nick.
Hello there.
A very spooky greeting to you, listener.
And in putting together our first Halloween anniversary episode, we pulled in a good friend and fellow horror head, Mike Falcigno.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Mike. So, for anybody unaware, just to give a little background on why we decided to pull you in specifically, we have been friends since I lived in Connecticut, and you are the go-to horror person as far as my circle. So, Mike is the owner of Grindhouse Tattoo in Connecticut, working on movies, working in doing sculptures, working in tattoos naturally, owning the shop and all of this. So you have your hand in a lot of pots these days.
Yeah, it's kind of a life as a monster kid from from as early as I can remember. So yeah, that's what I do. I make things that quite often lean towards horror, sci-fi, and things of that nature.
And your shop is essentially like an art space / horror museum.
There's definitely a museum element. There's a lot of original props and weird one-of-a-kind things that I've either made or come across over the years. So, and a shitload of original movie posters, like a lot. So
you might be well-versed in our topic today. So this whole big thing we're pulling together, for anybody unaware, what exactly are we doing? Well, since I was a kid, we used to have things like sleepovers and get a stack of movies to play through the night, or as getting older, there are theaters in the area that'll run annual Halloween overnight marathons. Thank you, Coolidge Corner Theater. So in the spirit of Halloween, we have all put together our own Dusk Till Dawn movie marathons. So we'll be running through our picks for each time slot, so settle in and enjoy.
Do kids still do like sleepovers?
Virtually on Zoom.
Sound old now. Yeah, right. I guess not for the last 2 years.
I think they have Zoom overs, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the first one
Watching
to go
Netflix.
idle.
That way they can chat their evenings together.
I mean, actually, in these days, I wonder if the past 2 years anybody has done like Zoom Friday nights, all the friends just turn on a movie kind of deal.
Isn't that just what Twitch is?
True.
There's a few horror channels, things on Facebook, where I noticed they have these watch parties, but it's kind of odd because it's a watch party with people typing things onto the Facebook group. So it's a little disjointed. I've never joined one because I wouldn't want to, but I like the idea. It's a fun idea.
Yeah. I know like the Shudder network has its own Discord, because everything has its own Discord nowadays. But they would set up different watch parties, and it would just be like, well, the community will do a vote on what their Friday night movie is, then everybody will watch it together, and then on Discord they'll all just like chat in real time on discussions and do post things. So it's like we've essentially taken that theater going experience of everybody getting together on a Friday night and just putting it into a digital space, which is terrific, especially for people that don't have other fans nearby. So some of the nice things.
Was I being negative? I didn't mean to sound negative.
Oh, no. It's
just the
damn Facebook.
A lot of the horror boards on Facebook, the vitriol that they throw at each other over a horror film is insane to me. Like, I constantly read, like, watched Midsummer, worst piece of shit I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, is it really that bad? Like, you have not watched enough horror movies. Like, the worst that you can find is there's something worse if you dig deeper. So
yeah, it's because nobody can have an opinion unless it's hard skewed towards it's the best he's ever seen or it's the worst thing you've ever seen. But there's never like that middle ground of like, yeah, I was expecting to be better, but it was okay.
I agree.
Because I think those aren't the posts that get the eyes on it. Everybody wants to see something polarizing on the internet now.
Yeah, you got to have the reaction face.
Yeah.
But I also feel that, like you were saying about podcasts, part of that attitude probably has a lot to do with an age bracket, because I don't want to date quite how old I am, but I am 46. So if you're in your late 20s even, you understand seeking out something and watching it. And when you seek something out, I feel like you give it a little bit more time and a little bit more understanding because you found it. Maybe you spent $20 to get it mailed to you, and you give it a little bit more of a chance versus these streaming sites. Like, kids can go to Amazon now, and Prime has so many films that I slaved over finding. It was like a mission to find this film. And now they can watch a minute and a half of it and be like, oh, what a piece of shit, and turn it off and kind of act like they watched the movie when they didn't. It's similar with music too, because you don't really need to invest in listening to an album anymore. It's just little sound bites and, oh, I don't like this. But maybe the song gets really cool in the middle, but you never got there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's growing up in the time of video stores. It's an event. You get excited. You're going through. You find not on the wall. You go into the center area. You find like one of the 80s movies or something, and its cover looks great. I've never seen it. You go home. You have to watch it, because if you don't like it or if you decide not to watch it, you don't just get to go back to the video store. Like, you have to wait now. Like, your parents aren't just throwing you in the car and you get to, oh, that's fine, go pick out another movie and we'll go back again. So, yeah, it's a little more investment than now, where I try not to shut off a movie unless it's to the point where it's like, I cannot do this, even when it's streaming and free. But you have to give it a little time just to see if that's the case, because otherwise there's been plenty of stuff that got picked up like halfway through or 3/4 in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it was a slow burn, but that last quarter.
That's very true. And plus, video stores, you could meet lifelong friends, like how I met you and Nick. I met Nick through you at that shitty ass Blockbuster, but that's where I met you both.
We were the best thing to come out of Blockbuster.
Yeah, oh, by far. Absolutely.
Thank you. That means a lot.
It's true. I mean, I remember meeting you there. Your long leather coat, not a trench coat, just like a hip length coat. You were just creeping the aisles, and we started talking about movies, and that's that. So it's the power of cinema.
And now, I don't know, a decade later, maybe more, and
Much
we're here
more.
talking cinema on a podcast, multi-state, cross-country.
This isn't
You
Eric,
bring in the cross-country, Dean.
Yes.
It's much more impressive when we throw you into the mix. Yeah, so let's get into this thing. I don't think we've established an order on this.
Or format. Like, are we all rounding?
It's going to
Is
be
it
round
rounds,
robin.
or is it
So-
like one down? Okay.
Yeah, so the game plan is we're going to imagine that we're going to be doing a movie marathon, and we're going to go through our lists of what meets each time slot of this marathon. So like, we'll do the 7 to 9 slot, and then we'll all go around the table and say, like, what's our 7 to 9 slot movie? Why would it be in that slot? So on and so forth. The way this is done, that means there is no actual midnight movie. Mike made me aware of that the other night, and I was like, shit. So there isn't a midnight movie. It's 11 to 1. If you really want a midnight movie, shift everything back an hour. We'll go
just
Central Time.
It's fine. You have four curators that love the genre, so you should be getting some very different and interesting marathons.
And the goal
Wait,
is
3 people that love the genre.
You're not supposed to cash yourself in like that. I mean, come on.
Oh, they already know if they've been listening.
You're supposed to
They're
let
well
them
aware.
slowly understand it as time goes on. Yeah, when all of a sudden you're like, Friday the 13th, part 1, part 2, part 3. Really picks up at part 5. Do you guys have any preference? Mike, do you want to be our closer as our guest? So you'll go last of the order, so your movie closes out the round
fine
up here?
with me. That's not a problem.
Okay. Then
The ringer.
I can bat start, Michael bat cleanup, and if you guys want to do the middle, and we'll go from there.
Nick and I will alternate each round.
Let's all alternate each round.
You can do whatever.
Who needs structure? So, my first movie, 7 to 9 o'clock, beginning of the night. I don't know if this is supposed to be the 30th into the 31st. We'll go with that. So we're going to lead into Halloween night. So I wanted to do something out of the gate. Everybody kind of settle in for some Halloween nostalgia as we go through Halloween commercials and news segments in a movie that's kind of a time capsule love letter to both the 80s and things like Ghost Watch, which is 2013's WNUF Halloween special.
Don't check your dial, folks. You didn't tune into Transylvania's public access station. No, sir. Tonight is Halloween.
Halloween is Satan's night, the night of the devil.
Reporter Frank Stewart has a special Halloween treat in store for viewers tonight. He'll be leading a group of paranormal experts to the infamous Weber House.
Do you know what happened here in the Weber House?
Some people got killed. Their son went haywire.
Frank Stewart and his team of experts will conduct the first ever live on TV seance.
Evil works in mysterious ways.
So for anybody unaware, it's essentially we follow this fake news station, WNUF, which I think is based on WNUV, which is a Baltimore news station, where it's kind of this fake news report of the anchors talking about Halloween and doing all these news segments, and then they cut over to their kind of man on the street, where he's outside this haunted house with all the townsfolk, and they're going to be talking about the history of it, and then going in there with paranormal investigators, a la kind of like the Warrens kind of deal, and taking a look at the house. But the entire thing is kind of like shot on video. It has that like very 80s look in terms of what you would just expect to get home and turn on and like Channel 4 or something, and just here's the news for the night. So it just hits that perfect feeling of that like children's nostalgia, while not necessarily being a children's movie, of course. But I don't know if either of you or any of you have ever heard of WNUF.
I have no problem stating that the very first film out of the gate that you mentioned, I have no clue what the hell you're talking about. And that
I didn't know what that was.
That is a rarity, and I still, it sounds very intriguing, but
Wrap it up, boys. We did it.
Yeah, and that beginning, your intro, I was like, son of a bitch, he's gonna do right out of the gate the same movie I'm doing. But then once you said the date, I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So
yeah, so it's
where can I find this?
I think it's actually on Shudder Network right now. Which, do you have Shudder?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
It's just too cheap. It's too cheap not to have.
Yeah, and it's they add enough stuff frequently that it's worth it. But yeah, I think it's on there right now. It's fairly short. I think it's like maybe 80 minutes or something like that. But it's a very fun segue into the rest of the night, just because it kind of gives you that memory of growing up and kind of like the news on TV on Halloween night while you're getting ready to go out the door and go trick-or-treating kind of deal. So it's in between. They also have all these fake commercials directed by kind of different friends of the director and writers and whatnot. And all of them are done like fake shows during that time or other like fun events and things. So it really kind of goes all out with making sure it stays as that feeling. The only thing that kind of takes you out is every so often they fast forward as if somebody's fast forwarding a VHS to kind of get through some of the commercials to get back to the show. And it's like, it's funny, but that's the only thing that's a little like reality breaking there.
So this, like, they did this special, and are they actually inadvertently capturing like crazy, not crazy moments, but like eerie moments like on television? Or is this just
sounds meta?
Yeah, so it's entirely meta. So they
meta.
They created the entire thing themselves. They just shot it and planned it like it was a 1987 news broadcast.
Okay, I understand now. Yeah, it looks legit.
Yeah, I forgot I was on some business trip one time. I was like in the middle of Nebraska in like the Halloween season, and this had popped up somewhere, and I ended up sitting down and watching, and I was like, I have no idea. I just went into it cold, and then it just really got me with the whole aesthetic that I was like, yeah, I love this movie. I would change maybe the very ending.
Oh, like, come on. This sounds like, no, this could either be a steaming pile of crap or a really fun time. And if you're recommending it, that's great, because I actually can watch something that I know is going to be good. So,
yeah,
maybe they don't stick the landing completely, but if it looks authentic, then it's cool. I can't get when people try to do a period and they do it so poorly that it ruins everything. because now you're just constantly picking out how this is not the 90s or the 80s because they tried, but they didn't try hard enough, you know?
Yeah. Or in cases where they pick a time period of like, oh, the 80s are hot right now, it takes place in the 80s. But if there's no reason for it to be in the 80s other than like, yeah, the 80s is popular, then what is it really adding to your movie? And then it especially is a glaring fault when something doesn't match up. It's like, okay, so it didn't need to be in the 80s. It didn't need to be in the 90s. You put it there even though it didn't need to be, and you didn't stick that landing there. But in this case, I think it needed to be that way just because of the whole aesthetic for it. So yeah, definitely check out, we'll start it off with WNUF Halloween Special.
Kudos to you.
So Nick or Dean?
You want me to take it, Dean?
No, I'm going.
You're going?
It's like the turtles on the roof on who gets to fight Shredder first.
Rock, paper, scissors. So my 7 to 9 movie pretty much assumes that somebody coming to a marathon like this is going to have seen plenty of horror and will understand all of the send-ups that this movie has, which is 2011's The Cabin in the Woods.
This must be it.
Let's get this party started!
Systems online.
Acquiring targets.
What is going on?
Somebody sent those things here to get us.
What is this place?
Cabin in the Woods. Rated R. In theaters April 13th.
Written by Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon. Directed by Drew Goddard. I think it was his first and only movie.
I think you're correct, actually.
And it's surprising that he hasn't gone back to direct something after making this movie. As the resident, really the biggest horror fan of this podcast. Horror isn't my first genre when it comes to film, first choice, but when I was researching this list, I was like, God damn, I've seen a lot of horror movies that I just don't come to the forefront of my mind. But
it's a genre that sneaks up on you.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of classic movies out there that it's all the bad ones that take the spotlight that makes you think like, oh, I don't like horror movies because I don't like all of those bad ones. But then when you really think about it, there's so much foundation in movies that are in horror that, oh, well, actually, it's a lot easier to be a fan of than you realize.
Also, I feel like in Hollywood, horror is a dirty word. It's like if it's good and it's horror, it's not horror, it's elevated drama.
Yeah, they have a million. They have so many different euphemisms. It's a suspense thriller. It's a shocking psychodrama. It's like it's a fucking horror movie. Like all Silence of the Lambs is a slasher done with a bigger budget. And with that bigger budget and better camera moves, it suddenly has this air of like being really, really classy. And it's a great movie, but it's just as sleazy. Like sperm gets thrown on Jodie Foster's face. It's exploitation. It's completely sleazy, but it has a pedigree behind it. So it gets excused,
Yeah.
That's a good point. But Cabin in the Woods just comes across as a really accessible, I guess I would say, horror movie. It sends up a lot of tropes of a teenage slasher film, but I just find it, I guess, for the 7 to 9 slot, something that's like, it's not really that scary. It's got its moments, but it's I guess just more just like starting a fun kind of mood to the night.
You don't want to chase them out too soon.
Don't want to chase them out too soon. And I just like I think I might have seen the trailer before this, but after. And you kind of get the sense that something is not right with this world, which is like 5 teenagers that fit this slasher archetype: the athlete, the virgin, the whore, the stoner. I'm getting one more, but the
rest of them,
the rest of the neon maniacs. They take a camping trip, which starts to turn into kind of a cliche slasher film. And it's intercut with great performances from Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins to this kind of underground plant that you don't really know what they're doing. And it slowly unfolds this story that's you find out why these kids are in the woods and what is really going on behind the scenes. And I don't know, it's just a really fun concept to me. And like kind of goes not off the rails, but a hard turn for the third act of the movie, which was, I know, I just thought it was a really fun concept.
Remember Tim showing it to me for the first time. I was immediately hooked, and this was at his house, and I had to go home, and I made sure that I had the movie downloaded and ready by the time I got home. This was like before streaming was really a big thing, so that movie hooked me so fast that I didn't realize, like, I thought it was going to be another typical I don't like slashers at all, or at least most of the typical ones, and the way that it was building itself up to be just another slasher, but with the way that it had its meta view behind the movie, and it was very self-aware, and seeing as how that was its whole shtick, immediately I was hooked.
I would like to weigh in for one moment to commend Dean, because I think Cabin in the Woods is an awesome choice to start off like a Halloween marathon. I really do. It's a film that people that have a knowledge love it for so many more reasons than the casual viewer. But I've always felt that if someone likes really crappy music and you play great music for them, they'll like both. And that's that kind of movie that plays on those tropes, kind of like Tucker and Dale, where it's so good no matter who you are. And if you just let it wash over you and you go along for this ride, that third act is freaking hysterical. I feel like they needed an extra 50,000, maybe more than that, 500,000 to probably do what they wanted to do. But what they accomplished with the budget they had is pretty exceptional. So good choice on that for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I went into that, like, I'd never seen a trailer for it. I never knew anything about it.
I wish I could have done that.
I think I saw it with my brother, who was like, oh, we have to see this movie. And he took me, and I sat there, and I was like, okay. And we started watching it. And then all of a sudden, they hit the part where they're just like having a conversation about he has to go liberate his cabinets because
that's the
they're
very
all
opening
like
of the
baby
movie.
safed or something. And all of a sudden, it just like does the scream and the hard cut to the title. And I was like, okay, I'm on board with this. Let's have
it's a
some
great
fun.
opening.
Which, like, usually there's a lot of times where there's movies they'll announce a sequel, and I'm like, this doesn't need a sequel. I feel like with the universe they set up, it doesn't need it doesn't need a sequel, but I definitely would have appreciated fleshing out and having other things of, like, they have so many different, like, monsters and things introduced that I would just love to delve into all of those a bit more. Although I wonder if it's a case of they're so fun just because none of them wear out their welcome. They're just kind of like introduced, but you're not stuck an entire movie on any of them specifically necessarily. So it's if they were to carve out into their own thing, it wouldn't necessarily be as effective.
And that surprise cameo towards the very end by that super heavyweight actress, that was pretty awesome. I wasn't expecting that at all, and that was great. So who's next?
Dean.
I didn't understand the assignment. So
Steve McQueen's bullet.
I thought there had to have been an actual theme to the marathon itself. So I apologize.
Why not?
If mine seems a bit extra.
Yeah, don't feel bad.
I'm sorry.
I think we all did a little bit of theming. It might be variations, but no, don't go for it.
Okay, so I based my marathon on the Xenomorph life cycle. So
Leonardo DiCaprio.gif.
So this is going to be all over the place, but it's a lot more of a metaphoric than an actual literal. So the very first phase of the entire life cycle is the egg. So I look at it as the beginning to a legacy.
Is Killer Bob in here somewhere?
So my first movie, seeing as how it's a beginning to not only tonight, but also just the legacy of just horror movies in general, my first choice would actually be Night of the Living Dead.
Welcome to a night of total terror. Night of the Living Dead.
With what it was able to do with just zombie movies in general, it created its own genre. It's created so many different child movies within its own universe and spawned so many different things afterward. I feel that it definitely has done quite a bit for itself over all of these years, and they're still making more of them. Isn't there like another one coming out soon? At least like George A. Romero's anyway.
I think Sci-Fi has like a Day of the Dead show starting up too.
Yeah, ever since Romero died, a lot of that stuff's been bought up and they're making like crazy remakes and stuff. But it's awesome that you picked that movie because I don't have Night of the Living Dead on my list, and it was in it for a long time. And I prayed somebody in the group would give like really the credit to that film because it did create ghouls. It went from ghouls to zombies. Like it created the zombie genre. So for sure, that's an awesome film. It still holds up. It's a great movie.
Yeah. It was surprising. Like seeing it shot in black and white as a kid, I always thought it was like, oh yeah, it's a super old movie. And then going and watching it afterwards and being like, oh no, it's a choice on doing all of this.
And frugality. Because it's
right.
And then like the part with like the kid and all of that, it's hits harder because it caught me off guard because I'm expecting this to be like, oh, this was made in like Abbott and Costello days.
Yeah, like
and
4:45.
Yeah. And then I'm like 9 watching it. I'm like, oh, this is different.
Abbott and Costello meet the zombies.
George Romero's Abbott and Costello.
I'm proud that I have seen this movie. There's a lot of classics that are horrors. Speaking of horror that I haven't seen, but I did see this one. I think it was in like college when I finally got around to sit down and watch it. And that was because one of
Pittsburgh?
one of my professors worked on Dawn of the Dead. So I just was like, I gotta watch some of these movies, like, and it was good. It looks, I don't say it looks cheap, but it's very well made, I guess, at the same time, like for what they were working with.
Sure. And that original trilogy, I mean, is equal parts like very smart social satire to horror. Like when you watch Dawn of the Dead, the horrific elements are few and far between when it comes to zombies, and it's more so the human characters, which when you look at something like Kirkman's Walking Dead, the entire concept, well, he might have thought of it on his own, I suppose, but it's so related to what Romero was doing. You know, who are the villains? It's like the bikers come in at the end of Dawn and they ruin this beautiful little utopia that the normal humans went to go make. You know, it's about men being assholes. So,
which I really liked when he originally did it, and it was kind of a fresher idea. And then over time, I feel like anytime there's a movie with zombies now, the moral is always man is the true monster. And it's gone on for so long that it's like, just once I want monster to be the real monster. Like, can we not have like, oh, the first 20 minutes is zombies, but then the last hour and a half is us having to fight with this other guy who decided he became the king of the world, and now they eat our people or something. Like, I just want it to start and end with monsters once.
I'll also mention,
spin it back.
This is not a spoiler because I will not say what it is, but the ending, the very, very ending of Night of the Living Dead, it shocked the hell out of me as a kid for one major reason. But then as an adult, I found it shocking because of the open-endedness of, did the perpetrators see that this person was alive and take them out for a personal reason? Or did they just think that he was a zombie? So I think I'm not really giving away, I'm kind of giving it away a little, but that open-endedness, I think, is a really haunting way to end that film. Coupled with the still frames of the rednecks burning people, it's pretty creepy to this day, you know. And that's 1968, I think, is when that came out. So
right,
it's a good pick, team. See, these are all great.
That was Nick.
Thanks, Tim.
You said good.
Clearly paying
Dean.
attention.
And Nick, I get your metaphor, and I like it. Because that's the impetus of an entire genre, and you're just connecting it to the egg stage of the xenomorph. Wonderful.
Like, it's now I'm doubly interested because not only is it like, here's a theme, but here's a theme that I'm then going to have metaphorical picks based off of. This is like
so
big brain time.
I'm wondering if the third movie is going to be a film that Hollywood executives fucked with into the ground. If you're going off the alien, but anyway, enough of that. So,
What's the chest bursting movie?
It's the horror, the action, the art house, and then the Hollywood one.
I will admit my last pick is kind of like fuck because we have 6 choices, but there's 5 stages.
So the last one is John Carpenter's Halloween.
I had to be a little creative with the last one.
So Mike, your 7 to 9 slot. What do we got?
All right. I will preface this just once in my first movie choice. Coming up with 6 movies was not easy because for me, at one point I was thinking like Nick was, where I was like, I thought maybe I would pick a silent horror film that was incredibly awesome, which would have been like Haxan, and then maybe go to a Universal classic, a Hammer horror classic, like a Vincent Price Poe classic, because my wife was super pissed at me for not having a Vincent Price film on my list. But I explained to her why. It's like I had to kind of pick things that I felt were super fun, not overviewed, and also tied into your time idea, which I thought was a cool gimmick. So we are going to start with what I think is the quintessential Halloween season film. It is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982.
First, there was Halloween. Then the terror continued with Halloween 2. Now, Halloween 3. The night no one comes home.
The world's going to change tonight, Doctor.
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Happy Halloween.
Rated R. Starts Friday at a theater near you. Check newspapers.
Without boring anyone, because most people listening to this probably know a little bit about horror movies, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill made Halloween. They wanted it to end there. They wanted Halloween to become a yearly film centered around the season of Halloween. The executives said no way in hell because Michael Myers was a huge hit. And Carpenter kind of bent over, agreed to do a Halloween 2 with Myers if he could make Halloween 3 what would have been the second Halloween film. So with that in mind, Michael Myers is not in this movie. He's on a TV screen, but he's not in the film. And this movie, it's a tough one to explain without giving spoilers away, but it takes every ridiculous concept of 80s technology and it beautifully mixes that with pagan lore, and it creates this film that is so fucking dark and so nihilistic, but at the same time, you get camp. You get like intentional camp, where you have a washed up alcoholic doctor who somehow hooks up with young women all the time and they love him. And he's drinking.
It's Tom Atkins.
It's Tom Atkins. He's drinking through the whole film. The bottom line is a mysterious guy shows up at a gas station clutching a Halloween mask, and he tells this gas station attendant, they're all going to die. They're going to kill us all. And then he gets shipped off to the hospital, and the movie just picks up from there. That's where he meets the doctor. And then a sexy young lady shows up, and her name's Ellie, and her dad is connected to this whole thing. Her dad sells Halloween masks. It all leads back to this guy, Conal Cochran, who is an Irish dude who owns the most popular Halloween mask and novelty factory called Silver Shamrock. So what you get is an extremely hilarious, but also very suspenseful film that really, really lays down the atmosphere. It's beautifully shot by Dean Cundy, who actually shot the original Halloween. So the cinematography is just like top notch. And John Carpenter worked with Alan Howarth quite a bit doing music. He does this score that is honestly like, it's probably my favorite Halloween series score. It's so good. There's a track called Chariots of Pumpkins that is amazing. And I listen to that score a lot when I'm drawing and prepping stuff for the next day. But Tommy Lee Wallace is the writer and director. And I want to say more about this film, but I'll just say that it is the quintessential Halloween film. It's so fun. And it has some problems. It is not a perfect film. And there are some budgetary constraints. There's a few lapses in logic that make no sense, but it has the paranoia of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and it's got a certain vibe that I so desperately want to say, but if I say it, I kind of ruin what it's all about. So with that in mind, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I know Tim's probably seen it.
I mean, everybody out there who's seen it now has the song stuck in their head, that jingle.
Oh, I forgot the connection. My apologies. The entire film builds up to kids being told throughout the entire film to get home to watch the big giveaway at 9.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the horathon. And remember the big giveaway at 9. Don't miss it. And don't forget to wear your masks. The clock is ticking. It's almost time.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
And placing this at 7 o'clock means the fucking crescendo of the film ends on Halloween night at 9 o'clock, exactly when the big giveaway would be happening. So that's why I put it first.
Now, you see, I was originally planning to put Halloween 3 as the closer to my marathon and then be like, walk out the doors and go home to that. Enjoy your morning. Yeah, I think Halloween 3 is a movie that didn't get the attention it deserved originally, and now I feel like it's become this cult favorite among the Halloween fans, which I love, just for the fact that I want to have a side marathon of all of the sequels that weren't well received that I appreciated.
They're actually great. There's a lot of them.
Yeah. Like, I know we were talking, which I don't know, the sequel we were talking about last night, is that on your list at all?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. So yeah, like Texas Chainsaw 2. Love Texas Chainsaw 2. I actually prefer it to the first one. That I would put on my list with like Halloween 3, Friday 5, like all of these ones that everybody's like, I don't know if that's my favorite of the series. It's like, it's mine. Lay it on.
I'm more inclined to watch it after that synopsis for it.
It's got some moments of cheese, for sure. But have you ever seen RoboCop?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, you got Dick Jones, and then you got the head of the company, the CEO. That is the guy who plays Connell Cochran, the big villain. So it's like there's a really great cast, and it's such a easy to watch film. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, plus for the fact that you said you're not a slasher fan, and despite coming in after Halloween 1 and 2, like this goes completely off from that. So it's...
Because I've seen Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, like the slash. I've seen the classics, but in terms of their sequels, I actually haven't really seen any of them.
Because they're all shit. They really are. But I'll tell you this, Nick. The tagline to this movie sort of gives you an idea without giving anything away. Halloween's tagline was The Night He Came Home. Halloween 3's tagline is The Night No One Came Home. And that should give you an idea of how epically evil this film is. It's such a mean-spirited movie. And I love that. So yeah.
And America loved it enough that Halloween 4 was the return of Michael Myers.
Well, they had to stick that in, just like Jason Lives after part 5. It's got Jason in the name. He's in it.
Well, I've also heard the whole thing of like, the final chapter is part 4. It's like, yeah, it's the final chapter, but there's a lot of epilogues.
Yeah, many epilogues.
So yeah, I think for first round, it's pretty nice as far as our 7 to 9 slots. And that one, I think, especially with the timing you said of get home for the big giveaway, works so well for the 7 to 9 now.
How about after every round, you just rattle off the 4 titles for people?
No, everybody should be taking notes at home.
We just went off on a half hour tirade on the first film. So
so my first pick was the WNUF Halloween special.
The Cabin in the Woods from Dean.
What did I pick? Night of the Living Dead.
And Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, 1982.
Which brings us to the 9 to 11 slot. So I don't think my overall theme wasn't so much a theme as it was like a feeling or sense throughout all of these. So in terms of this, my 9 to 11 slot was the one of the ones that was a little less thematic and a little more like practical, for the fact that it's a Argentinian film called Terrified from 2017.
¿Qué es lo que está pasando, chiquito?
Viniste a visitarnos. ¿Qué es lo que te trajo hasta acá? ¿Pero qué es lo que implica todo esto? Esto implica que nosotros tres vamos a dividirnos en cada una de las casas donde creemos que ocurren los fenómenos paranormales.
So my goal in putting this here is because it's still fairly early in the marathon that people are still awake enough to read subtitles before they completely cash out. So like I'm hopefully they're still riding the excitement and the high of kind of being a part of this, so they don't mind reading the subtitles. But as I said, like it's this great Argentinian horror film of all of these strange happenings popping up in this small neighborhood as kind of an interdimensional rift to hell begins bleeding out into the world. And it's just like scene after scene after scene of, it's like they sat down and thought up all of these really creepy scenes, but they don't seem like non sequitur. It's not like I didn't hate the remake of It, but it felt very on the rails of plotline is irrelevant. It's just getting you to like a roller coaster of to the next scare and to the next scare and to the next scare of just the scenes they set up. This, it's like they set all of those up, but it never feels like that kind of you're on the rails getting tracked through a haunted house kind of deal. It's all of these build on each other and make sense with what they're laying out here. Because as they're investigating, it's, well, the movie opens with kind of this situation happening at a house and somebody dies, and then they interview the husband, and it's, well, what happened? Well, it all started the other day when there was the car accident. Well, before they get to the car accident the day before, they then go before that to explain what leads up to the car accident that then leads up to this, that then leads up to the investigation they're doing in the town right now. So it's all of these pieces kind of clicking into place. But I feel like if I put it any later than this, people are going to be like, I'm 4 hours in. I can't read for 90 minutes.
What's the name of this movie?
Terrified. Not to be confused with Terrifier.
Totally
the
different.
Clown. Totally different movie. If you see The Clown, you've gone too far.
Or The Terrified.
So yeah, it's on Shudder right now. For anybody that doesn't mind doing a little reading, it's a terrific kind of, not even a haunted house. It's like a haunted block film.
All I will say on that film is it was surprisingly excellent. I thought it was very unique. And if you don't mind subtitles, which clearly I don't, I think it's a great watch. And it suffers from a horrible photo placed with the title, because it's just this, it looks like a stupid like Halloween prop. And I saw it, I passed over that movie forever. And then finally I just let it play for a second where you get a little clip. And then I sat down and watched it, and I'm glad I did. It's a cool movie.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's that cover like put me off that movie for a while until finally I was like, I've consumed everything I can off Shudder. Let me give this a shot. And then I started watching, and I'm like, oh, this is not what the cover sets up. Because the cover, it's kind of like a, I don't know, kind of like a 3D modeled looking creature thing. But then you get into the movie, and it's just a lot of kind of fun work with creature effects, and granted some like CGI things, some practical, just all sorts of stuff. And it's pretty fun.
It's lit really well. I like the lighting in that film.
Yeah.
So.
Is there a lot coming out of Argentina as far as horror?
There's a bit.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot of, like, Shudder has been great about having just a lot of international films that it's been kind of collecting over time for release from there.
I gotta guess very cheaply they're picking these films up.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of people watch them with the dubs and they say the movie sucked. And I'm like, watch the movie in its original language. You can't watch Dark, the TV show, dubbed in English. You just cannot do it. I mean, you can, but it's really stupid. It's a waste of time.
Yeah. Which I feel like the only drawback that I have of like all of these ones on Shudder, I've been, I think the other one I was watching, like Satan's Slaves, I think it was like 127 Masalana Street, like all these different movies that you can't throw it on the background while you're working on something because you have to actually read the subtitles. So it's like, okay, so these ones I actually have to like take some time, finish up a project I'm working on, and just enjoy it. And it's worth it. But I know that's kind of a big ask from some people necessarily. So definitely take the time and check it out.
As an unpaid promotion, I have been considering about subscribing to Shudder, a lot of people have been recommending like you should get Crunchyroll, you should do like, Funimation for, anime, but I don't have a lot of time for that. You have to sit and watch it.
Yeah.
It's a requirement because of just the nature of the content. So I was thinking along the lines of, well, maybe I should try out the Shudder network and see how it is. As someone that is not focused on horror as a central, like their favorite genre, is it worth subscribing to it?
Well, for the horror network, if you're not interested in horror, they do have a lot of like Asian gangster films, things like that. They get into like exploitation things from like the 70s, 80s, so on and so forth. So I mean, there is other stuff, but even if you're not necessarily into horror, it has a lot of things from all across different genres of horror that you might still end up picking up something that you find interesting. They have a lot of original documentaries, original shows that are good. They've brought back Creepshow as a anthology series that comes on like every Thursday. That's pretty good. We have documentaries like Horror Noir about the Black experience in horror cinema. We have all of these other ones like was it Eli Roth's History of Horror. So there's all sorts of other things that even aside from being interested in just like watching a horror movie, there's a lot of interesting things just from kind of a historical or kind of a historian standpoint on it. And then actually Horror Noir, I think, got greenlit that now they have a movie coming out soon that is going to be an anthology movie of 6, I think like Black created horror films that are going to be part of the thing because of the success of Horror Noir.
Yeah, Nick, I would tell you. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I didn't want to digress too much, but it was a a curiosity that's been building, and certain things it's hard to recommend something with a strong niche in that category to someone that would be like a layman or just like that's not really my thing. And as much as I do appreciate and like horror versus others, like I don't mind seeing the gore, I don't mind seeing the jump scares and all that. Most of it doesn't faze me, but I have been curious about it. I figured at least, it's just been a question I've been meaning to ask. And since both of you are already well articulated in having Shudder and, have used it before, I figured might as well ask.
Well, I'm not going to echo everything Tim said because I agree with everything that Tim said. But in addition to that, if you're someone who's curious about the horror as a broader genre over a time frame, what I like about Shudder is 30 or 40% of it is garbage. Like it's not really good. But they have some deals. I find that I end up buying a few Blu-rays because I'm that kind of physical media collector. And they end up making deals with these certain companies. And they tend to play really good quality versions of some classics. Where you could actually watch a few Italian giallo films, which are more psychological, twisty-turny crime slashers that have more of an emphasis on visual flair and like red herrings. So they're more like crime movies, but the kills are creative, so that makes them kind of slashery. They always have a few of those that are good ones. And then they also have some shit where I'll be like, wow, like this is on Shudder. Like the original Town That Dreaded Sundown or the original My Bloody Valentine, like some really good old school movies that I'm surprised are mixed in with some of this garbage. And I thought Horror Noir was worth that one documentary to me was worth a whole month of just subscribing to that. And they also have the Cursed Films series where they cover like The Omen and Poltergeist, but they kind of debunk the curse. It's taken from the standpoint of a skeptic, which I love because that's who I am. So, and in addition to that, you get some other stuff that's way surprising, like In Search of Darkness is like a 4-hour documentary that you had to like get in on a Kickstarter, and they have 2 volumes, so it's 8 hours worth of like documentary footage of 80s horror films. And I'm so glad I didn't waste the money to get those because I just watched them for free essentially on Shudder. So yeah, Shudder, if you're listening, you could hook Tim and I up with some free stuff. So
like at least a t-shirt.
Yeah, I want
every episode Tim at least mentions Shudder once. So it's the advertisement through Tim is well worth it.
It's curated a bit better than like Netflix or any of those other streaming sites. So
I feel like with horror, you have to be a fan to operate something like that, like an endeavor like that streaming service, which, as you said, like it has a lot of stuff, not all of it terrific, but I think that's where the numbers game comes in of like, we have X budget. If we picked up these 5,
yeah,
well, we could also pick up these 10 and still finish out the rest of the month. And that's where we end up with all of them, which I have fun with some of those too, but
Shudder is more than 50% good. And that's all. Like, for a horror fan who grew up loving different types of horror films, they have so many good things on there. I am a total loser that's got thousands of Blu-rays. If you're someone who doesn't have like physical media collection like that, it's pretty cool to watch some of these, like Hell Night. Hell Night is something you need to spend $25 to get a Blu-ray of it, or you could watch it on Shudder and realize that you don't really need to own it. So, you know, it's good to have.
With numbers like that, honestly, I'm sold. I'll probably subscribe. There's too many where it's like I'll subscribe literally for just one thing, and then the entire rest of the subscription kind of goes to waste. Or at least there have been shows where I'll binge and specifically subscribe to one of those niche networks only for that one thing, and that's it. So for it to have more than just, 40-50%, I feel that's enough. So at least it's not just, pick something at random and I know there's a good chance of me liking it.
Yeah, for sure.
Good to know.
So that's Terrified. Dean, what do you got? 9 to 11.
What do I got? Okay, so following up The Cabin in the Woods from 7 to 9, this film also kind of builds on a trope, but not in a comical way, I would say. It still shows you the consequences that having sex can bring you in a movie. Tim and I went to see this, and it's another more recent film, but again, I don't watch a lot of horror movies. A lot of the horror movies I do see probably cross genres, like action horror or comedy horror. But this one, there's like 2 scary movies I think on my list, like really scary movies. This one is scary, more creepy. With
if it's what
moments
I think
of jump scares,
super creepy. If it's what I think it is,
it is 2014's It Follows.
Yes.
Wherever you are, it's somewhere walking straight for you.
It could look like someone you know, or it could be a stranger in a crowd. Whatever helps it get close to you.
That soundtrack.
Yes.
It's a bop.
That soundtrack, side note, that we used to take walks with my wife, with Laura, and I just, we were alone at night, like in a nice, a safe place in town, but like I just started to play that theme and she was just like, "What are you doing?"
When we left the theater, I found it on Spotify and I listened to it on the way home.
But It Follows, it follows the story of a young college girl who meets a guy, they hook up, and he tells her, "Hey, now that we've hooked up, you've got this supernatural being hunting you for the rest of your life." That apparently the only way to get rid of this being is not by killing it, but by having sex with another person. Did it have to be a virgin, or you just have to be somebody?
I think it's just anybody.
Sleep with somebody.
No, it's just sex.
And then the demon starts to follow them, and if it manages to kill who it's following, it goes to the last person that this person had sex with, and back in time, following this chain of sex. Which I want to see the prequel now. Like, where did this start? Not really, but I mean, you don't need to explain everything, but it just makes you think. But it's a really creepy movie. Like, I love the opening to this movie because you don't really know what the hell's going on. Like that, if you guys remember that opening shot.
Yeah.
It's just a 360-degree pan, very slow, of this girl running out of her house and kind of looking behind her, but we don't see anything. We don't know what she's running from. Runs in a big circle as if leading something and then drives off. And then all of a sudden later, she's just dead. We don't know what happened to her. And then once you realize what the monster is, it makes perfect sense. But I thought it was just like a really cool opening to like, I don't know, confuse you, but also
starts you off balance.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, I don't know where this is going to go then.
The entire film is uniformly off kilter in such a subtle way that I love it. I love It Follows because anyone I've ever shown it to, if they're not on their phone, you can see that you can see they're uncomfortable for the entirety of the film. Like you never feel at ease. Even weird choices like the TVs and a lot of the things surrounding seem vintage, and there's almost a Peanuts or Tom and Jerry vibe where the parents, adults, are barely in it, and a lot of times you just hear them off screen. And then that girl has like
the clamshell.
She's got like a clamshell like berry thing. I'm like, so this has got to be modern day. But then the TV looks like it's from 1970. It's just a very off-putting movie.
Aesthetically strange, yeah.
And that sequence of her driving off with that amazing score kicking, and then the score slowly becomes, it metamorphosizes into the noise of her car, is like one of my favorite shots in that whole movie because it's so blended. Like it's just this fever dream. Like I feel like you're half asleep and waking up while you're watching that movie. Like it's so odd. But
speaking of this, the music and sound design, like the couple like kind of jump, I guess, startling scares. What they're showing of the monster, it's such a weird fucking like, because it can be anything. It can be, well, any person essentially. It's always a human form.
Anything
when it's following you.
Your desk.
But just the grotesque kind of like versions of real humans that it, for lack of a better way to describe it, like it's very off-putting. But then when it cuts, these hard cuts to, boom, there it is. It's in your living room. Just there's like that electronic hit that it's really like bassy,
that driving,
like, yeah,
like a klaxon type.
Yes, it's like really unsettling. It's just it's jarring, like a jump scare, but it's also once it holds on those shots of, and you're like, this is fucked up.
I was actually,
but it's really effective.
I was talking to Tim about this movie. I think yesterday, was it, Tim?
Probably.
It was probably yesterday. One of the things that I love about It Follows is that you're never sure of a single rule because it's essentially taking the telephone game and applying that to a high stakes situation like your life. Because that kid telling our lead what she has to do and what the rules are, you have no clue if that's correct because someone else told him and you don't know where it came from. And when people online especially decide to hate that film and put it in their lowest, echelon of garbage films, they're the same people that bitch and moan that all Hollywood and all horror does is it recycles another remake, another this, another that. It Follows is creating a unique villain, a new villain. And I don't understand why people can get on board with a werewolf, which is completely not plausible. But they're like, all right, I'm watching a werewolf movie, so I buy that there's a werewolf. It Follows is creating a force, like a force of nature, kind of death. I mean, it's death and it's all of that. It's existential, but why can't more people accept that as the villain? Like I feel that when people hate it and I ask them why, they're like, it's stupid. Like, what's this thing? But that's what makes it great, because when I left the theater, my brother and I had this lengthy conversation where he kept saying what he would do, and I kept pointing out how that wouldn't work. And he was getting more and more frustrated as I pointed out that would work. He's like, I'd fuck a whole bunch of hookers, then I go live on an island. And I'm like, yeah, but then when it finally comes to the island, you're trapped by water all around. So how would you get out of that? And he's like, oh man, what the fuck? And it's like, that's what makes it so scary. So yeah, that's a great choice.
You hang out at Cape Canaveral for every astronaut leaving the training program. Yeah, but we're going to be up on the station for the next 5 years. Thank you.
Yeah, but it'll
that part of the monster is that it, for the person who's unaware, that it walks slowly but surely, kind of like Jason Voorhees, but and doesn't stop. You could fly to the other side of the country. You could probably use you could calculate how long it's going to take for that thing to walk towards you, but it will reach you. So you have to essentially live your life on the run, and that's what that kid that gave her the curse is doing. He sleeps in a house with like booby traps or sound alerts, I guess, essentially just to, because you never know when that it's gonna. going to reach you, and that just makes it that much freakier and scarier, I think.
Yeah, it's a smart little movie. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the problems some people might have had is they're looking for, they want a tangible monster. Like, they want that big ending of, here's the monster that we see, or like, here's whatever they're fighting. And when they don't get that, or they get like an abstract idea of that, it's like, well, now I'm annoyed. And it's like,
what's so different about the movie?
That's the joy.
In the third act, our two heroes concoct what feels, in a narrative sense. If you were watching any other horror movie, the way it's presented and the way it's built up, the idea, with the certain electrical thing and water, the way they build it, you're watching it, or I was watching it being like, okay, this will be the way to get it, because they've put that kind of narrative push on it. And then it doesn't do shit. And that's what I think is so great about it. It's like, wow, look at that. You build it all up and it did nothing. It made it scarier,
Yeah.
The goggles.
They do nothing.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's the ending shot. It's tries to be profoundish, not profound, but it's like, where is it there? It just essentially, like, they'll have to live the rest of their lives, like, not really knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
still being followed.
The Inception top spinning kind of deal of like,
exactly. Yeah,
this is going to cause a discussion.
Yep.
I mean, it's what if we find out that the kid just made that up and he just does that to every girl that he's with, and now all of them are just like running around and like barricading themselves in. It's like, yeah, there's nothing involved with this.
Just a prank hand.
It's a prank hand.
Yeah, anything you could think of would just prolong it. Because I was thinking when I was watching, I'm like, what if you had like a group that agreed to do like relay fucking, where it'd be like we're going to fuck super fast, and then I'm going to run and run and run. And when I get tired, I'm going to meet you. You're going to be waiting a quarter mile away at this gas station, and we're going to fuck real fast. And then you're going to go like, but still, you're all going to die eventually. It's horrible. It's like
you live your life a quarter mile at a time.
My thought was like a government program where it's like you volunteer to get on the list, and just like it spans the globe, just so you keep passing it around, and then
yeah.
You get scientists involved so they calculate how long it's going to take to
get like a push notification to your phone. Oh, it's my place in line.
That is
going to get late tonight.
That's a decent setup for a sequel. I don't know if you could fill an entire film with it. But if you had one person who was maybe like inclined mathematically speaking, like they were just a prodigy, and maybe they've been alive, they've been the guy for the last like 6 months, they've been outrunning this thing because they've calculated it. The only problem is like it sort of has to end in a similar way. Like, where does it end? Because you're not going to kill it. It's more so like a little cool idea, but
yeah, it would ruin it if you killed it, but it's like, there, where else do you go?
So essentially, it follows if he has to go after Russell Crowe from A Beautiful Mind. The movie just ends with him just on a chalkboard doing math.
It ends at the AVN Awards, and it's just getting spread from one porn star to another. So much sex before you're going to get killed. The guy's like, I think I just bought myself 5 years. I'm good with that.
I mean, or I still love the idea of him just doing math on a board with that driving soundtrack going in the background.
Yeah, right.
Wherever you are, it's somewhere walking straight for you. But it is walking. If you drive far enough, you could buy yourself some time.
This is great. Who did this?
The AVN Awards, I just imagine it shows the monster and it just like keeps changing directions.
Yeah, like doesn't know what to do. It's like the monster is spinning in circles because of the Houston 500. It's just over and over and over.
You slowly see a hole start to form in the floor.
Wormhole. Yeah.
Oh shit.
So yeah, it follows. Good pick for a 9 to 11 slot.
And take us to the face hugger.
So this one is where it's supposed to draw you in and you have no idea what's going to unfold. When you first see the face hugger, that's exactly what happens, because everyone just crowds around it and they're just thinking like, what is this? They're poking and prodding. And then after all of their examinations, it just keels over dead and they have no idea what's going on. So with this one, I decided that The Thing would be the best way to kind of encapsulate that?
100,000 years ago, it came to our galaxy. Trapped in the wasteland of Antarctica, it could not escape. Now, it is free to become one of us. John Carpenter's The Thing, rated R.
Especially with its ending, where you really have no idea what's going on, at least in terms of the way that it's set up. I don't want to spoil the end of the movie, but throughout the entire movie of The Thing, some kind of alien parasite mimics other people, and there's no way, they have no idea who is infected with this like parasite virus thing until it's pretty much too late. They eventually discover a means of kind of figuring out who, but by this point in time, it's pretty much too late. And by the very end of the movie, especially, they have no means of testing each other. So it's pretty well open-ended as to, you know, did this thing was finally killed off? Or is it still alive? We have no idea.
One of the all-time greats.
That made Thing is on my cutting room floor as far as picking movies for my list. So.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, for me, John Carpenter, by a narrow margin, is my favorite horror director. People ask me all the time who's my favorite horror director. So I figured out, like, I just went through everything one day and was like, it's John Carpenter. Like, Romero's way up there, Fulci's up there, Tobe Hooper, they're all up there. Carpenter has made more, like, amazing films, I think, throughout his career. And I would cite The Thing as my absolute favorite sci-fi horror movie. Like, it's so hard to call it. I mean, it is pure horror, but it is more of an alien-based horror. But it is it's in my top 5 favorite films of all time. I think it is a perfect film, like perfect, up there with Jaws in terms of everything, every element that makes film amazing. It all comes together in The Thing to where I couldn't change any part of it if I had the ability and think that it would improve it. It's just lightning in a bottle perfection. And after watching it for 30 plus years of my life, I actually think I figured out what may be the correct outcome. I won't say it here because we're not spoiling the movie, but it took me till I was 46 of watching that movie, because Carpenter has always said there are there's puzzle pieces throughout the film. There is a clear-cut end, and who's the thing, who isn't. And he'll never say. He said that before. He could be full of shit and it isn't there, but I kind of believe him, and I think I may have figured it out. But again, it took me that long. I mean, I've probably seen that film probably 100 times. Like, it's got to be around that. I could recite most of it, and there's only 5 or 6 films that fall into that category for me. So, awesome pick. That one hurt. It hurt to not put that on my list. It hurt.
It's definitely one of my top favorites. And it's funny to know, back when it first came out, it had poor reception. No one liked it, and it was definitely proof that it was ahead of its time, because now it's gathered that cult favoritism that, you know, it tops so many different horror list movies, but at the time when it was released, you know, 30 plus years ago, no one really talked or even cared about it.
If you ever want to laugh, listen to the Siskel Ebert review when it came out. It's a travesty what these idiots talk about.
I think the failure of The Thing cost him Firestarter, I'm pretty sure.
He had a minor meltdown after that. He didn't make a movie he was a mess. He's openly said that. It broke his spirit pretty heavily, according to him. So
that's too bad, considering the legacy it's made afterward.
And the effects to this day hold up as my favorite effects from
they're pretty solid. Done by a 19-year-old kid. Yeah. I mean, he had a big crew, but he was the showrunner of all that. So Rob Bottin was his name. But, you know, The Thing came out. My amazingly awesome dad took me to see The Thing, which I will never, like, I love that my dad would take me to see some of the best horror movies that ever came out when I was like under 10, but he would take me to them. And The Thing came out the same week or maybe a week after E.T. And I really think that E.T. really cleaned up, and a lot of people I don't think went to go see The Thing because of that. I mean, E.T. was a phenomenon. It was like everywhere. So,
do you think any parents confused the two when they were getting tickets?
No.
This doesn't look like Amblin at all.
What do you want to see? The Thing. You know, what is it, Bobby? What thing? Oh, The Thing.
The thing with the alien.
My dad's a big reason, I think, of my life in horror, because like when I was in first grade, he would put me to bed at 7 and wake me up at 11, and we would watch the Universal movies on Channel 9. But I would usually fall asleep before the end. So I kind of would live with this voracious appetite to see the ends of these movies that I would fall asleep for. So, but yeah, that guy, like, you know, he loves the original Thing, and that's why I think he was super stoked to go see
the James Arness thing.
Yeah, Howard Hawks thing. Yeah. That's a great that movie still really does hold up. It's an excellent example of 50s sci-fi for sure.
Because I've never read the source story. Was it Who Goes There?
Yeah, John Campbell. There's actually a longer. Only about a year ago, they discovered like additional chapters in the weirdest place. Like they were just sitting around, and I think they released, at least online, you could read the entire story with an extra like 30 or 40 pages in it. So that's kind of cool.
It's one extra line. It just says, "Who's the alien?" at the very end.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, but they weren't even in the original.
I just today picked up actually the NECA's flamethrower McCready figure. They started a Thing line. They're already milking it. They did regular McCready, well, regular, with his hat, his goggles, his whiskey, but they didn't have the flamethrower because I guess it's too much shit to put in one box, so they just had to re-release it essentially. But this is the one I waited for, just to have the flamethrower version. But it's pretty badass.
Then they have every character as a figure. Then they have the dog. Then they have the Norwegian on the.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what versions of the Thing they do. I mean, they have to do one with the dog, one with what's his name? That splits and his head's like
the split head guy from the beginning.
That's got to be one of them. In any case,
well, Palmer. I think you're thinking of Palmer. Palmer's the head that actually opens. And mentioning, Tim said that like he loves the practical effects. I of course do as well. The only practical effect in that movie that does now hold up is the Windows puppet that is being puppeteered while he's being eaten, because that you have to look at a different spot on the screen, because once you see those puppetry legs, it's so skinny, it's like a little child. Once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. The 4K doesn't do it any favors because those sequences are a lot clearer, but it's still fucking awesome. Like I'm not taking it away from it.
So yeah, Nick, The Thing, classic.
The Thing,
perfect choice.
Mike,
thank you.
9 to 11.
We're doing that, huh? 9 to 11.
We can do.
No, I'm just messing with you. All right. So,
unless you have a 3-hour movie and carry it right to midnight.
9 to 11.
The Suspiria remake.
It's that perfect peak, right? I mean, like, people have already sat through Halloween 3, and it ends very nihilistically. So they need the ultimate fun romp, like just a super fun horror movie. And for my money, 1985, Fright Night.
Charlie Brewster is about to discover there are some very good reasons to be afraid of the dark.
Look, I know it's crazy. I know that, but look, Lieutenant!
What happens if you go into that house alone and he gets you?
Fright Night. If you love being scared, it'll be the night of your life. Rated R. Now at select theaters. Check newspapers for showtimes.
The original Fright Night, it's written and directed by Tom Holland, who a lot of people would know because he wrote Psycho 2. He also directed the first Child's Play. This film is an absolutely perfect blend of Rear Window and Dracula. And it's so perfectly put together. I've been able to play this film at my tattoo shop for the last 10 years. And every single person that's watched it is just in love with it. I've never had a single person be like, that was all right. Because a lot of people will tell me if they're not into something. It just has this perfect mix. And it basically is, you are Charlie Brewster a regular kid who lives in a small town, and this hot girl walks by you one day to go visit the new neighbor, and she ends up dead. And you decide to be a peeper, and you're checking out this guy and seeing what he's up to, and you witness him kill someone, and he had fangs and long fingers. So it goes from there to him trying to convince his friends who do not believe him. And then Roddy McDowall from Planet of the Apes. Roddy McDowall plays an amalgamation of every old school horror actor. His name's Peter Vincent, which I'm going to assume is Peter Cushing and Vincent Price put together. And he's pretty much like a Doctor Who version of Elvira. And he's not only an actor in these films, but he has a TV show. So Charlie gets in his head that Peter Vincent will believe me because the guy bullshits all the time in his monologues about how he knows vampires are real. So you get this teenage kid trying to convince a washed up horror host to help him kill his neighbor. And the film crams 4 movies worth of fun into a mere hour and a half. There are so many different sequences that are standout sequences that you'll always remember. And they actually managed to make Marcy, the neighbor from Married with Children, Amanda Burse, they take her from this plain Jane neighbor into the hottest vamp. Like, she's so sexy in this movie. And you just couple that in with great cinematography, ridiculously awesome humor, and some seriously cool prosthetic makeup. Like, it's just everything I love about the 80s put into one film. And it stands the test of time. And the remake that gets shit on massively is actually not bad. And I have a special love for Anton Yelchin, and I was totally bummed when he died. So yeah. I do revisit that remake once in a while. It's a good movie, but it's not as good as Fright Night. And there's also a sequel. This will get a little confusing. There's a piece of shit modern sequel that is horrible. But then there's also an original sequel that reprises the roles of William Radsdale, who plays Charlie, and Roddy McDowall, who plays the Peter Vincent guy. And your main vampire in the first one is a guy named Jerry Dandridge. The sequel is his sister coming to get revenge on Charlie. It's not as good because Fright Night is just perfect, but it's still fun. So if you end up watching Fright Night and you love it, seek out the out of print. There's a really bad artisan DVD that's full frame that's terrible, but there's a few people doing on-demand recordings of really nice widescreen transfers of the second movie. So if anyone wants to know where to get that, they can send me a message and I will let them know. But yes, Fright Night, awesome flick.
I think Fright Night has always been a family favorite of ours, but Chris Sarandon as Jerry Dandridge is what I think elevates that entire movie.
He's amazing.
Because he's a good villain, but at the same time, I'm like, I would have a beer with this guy.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean, he killed a couple people, so what?
And there's a moment where he tells Charlie to forget about him. It's like, he's not a total dick. He's like, forget about me, but Charlie can't forget about it, and he's got to push it. So then he's like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to absolutely destroy you. And I always like that.
But yeah, just so much from that movie has... So the differences between what things click with my parents from that movie and my brother and I is my parents always remember the, like...
You have to have faith for this to work on me, Mr. Vincent.
And then my brother remembers when the cop shows up to take a look at everything after Charlie is like,
I'm telling you, Jerry Dandridge is a vampire.
Sure, and I'm Dirty Harry. Now let me tell you something, kid. If I ever catch your ass down at the station house again, I'm throwing it in jail forever.
Because it's forever. He like pops that forever. Yeah, and I'm Dirty Harry, kid. Awesome. Movie's so good.
One of the classics I have not seen.
I've only seen
Dean,
the
you should
remake.
watch it. You'll like it. You'll like it a lot.
I just watched the trailer, or let it play while we were talking.
Then you get introduced to Evil Ed as the best friend, and then you go watch 976 Evil.
What caught me was Chris Sarandon's in it, and he's in Child's Play.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Stephen Jeffries, who plays Evil Ed, he was in a movie called Heaven Help Us, which is a really raunchy comedy about a bunch of Catholic school kids. A very young Kevin Dillon's in it, Andrew McCarthy. It's a great little movie. He plays a kid who cannot stop masturbating. And what's so funny is later in life, he left film and he went on to be a pretty big gay porn star. And then he stopped being in movies altogether. So that's the strange story of Stephen Jeffries. So
perfect for the 9 to 11 slot.
Exactly. It's like a nice palate cleanser, and it gets you ready for more stuff. So
at this point, we're at 11 to 1, which ideally would have been a midnight movie if I did my times correctly. So the 11 to 1 crossover. You made it through Terrified, group of researchers investigating strange happenings in this neighborhood, and I reward you for reading subtitles for 90 minutes by giving you another movie about researchers investigating strange goings-on in a church basement this time, though. So I feel like
awesome.
I feel like this one is well regarded in horror circles, but outside of like specific horror circles, I feel like it drops off in lieu of John Carpenter's more famous works. It's a great kind of survive the night story in combination with the classic like portal to hell situation. It is 1987's Prince of Darkness.
I've got a message for you.
This is the shape of fear.
You're not going to like it.
This is the color of hell.
What is it?
And this is the power of the Prince of Darkness. From John Carpenter, director of Halloween. A vision of the most powerful evil of all. Prince of Darkness.
Where are you?
Rated R. Starts Friday at theaters everywhere.
So, for those unaware, the movie is all of these kind of John Carpenter greats. We have Dennis Dunn, we have Victor Wong, we have, I think, was it Peter Jacobs? We have Donald Pleasance playing another character, Loomis, except now this time he is a priest. So the whole thing is all of these different people are getting pulled into this church because after a priest passed away, they ended up finding this kind of like giant glowing green vat in the basement. So they bring in like all of these, this other priest, which is Donald Pleasance as Loomis. We bring in all these other people from the high school or the college that are all these different researchers. So all of them are going to run tests. They're going to take a look at it. And then as they're there overnight, they're going to stay the night and sleep there while they investigate it. And it's all of these things start kind of going haywire of kind of weird noises. We have people getting like drawn to the basement. We have these other situations. And we find out that there's all of this leading up to the giant green fluid essentially being liquid Satan. So it's great to see all of these John Carpenter favorites coming back. It's great to just have this almost like a bottle episode of all of this action occurs in this one church the entire time between like the basement, the upstairs, the hallway, the various rooms, but it's all entirely enclosed there. That it's also, we have a side thing, but with Alice Cooper, who shows up as a transient who is outside. But it's all of these different characters that just have a great feel to them. And I especially love when they end up dreaming and they fall asleep, there's this dream that they keep having of this weird kind of slow camera pan of looking at this figure in the hall, like the doorway of the church, as you just have this like radio announcement going through your head that we're beaming this in from like the future or another dimension because we can only connect with you via your dreams.
That scene looks like it's from a Ministry video, like some sort of industrial. Yeah. Oh man, I was so glad you picked Prince of Darkness because the opening. Come on, you got to talk about the opening. It's so Carpenter and it's so awesome.
Yeah, it's like I know this is part of his was the End of the World or his Apocalypse trilogy.
Yeah,
where like the three kind of unrelated, they're not tied together movies, but like The Thing, this, and Into the Mouth of Madness, which I was almost going to do that one. And then I was like, this one just kind of makes sense following Terrified because it's kind of a similar thing of the investigation side of things, except you are now introduced to the same concept, but from two very different standpoints of here's kind of a modern international telling. And then you have this like hard 80s like American style version of it.
With half the cast from Big Trouble, which is amazing. It's like you get people from Big Trouble in Little China in this movie. So and Hollywood.
I just love how Dennis Dunn manages to essentially just play his character from Big Trouble Little China in this, and it just still works.
Yeah, he's totally Wang, but we're supposed to believe that he's like a very intelligent college student that also makes nothing but inappropriate comments that would get him canceled in 2020. It's ridiculous.
He's like getting chased and he's still making jokes.
Rampant sexism in this movie. It's hysterical. So
yeah, so has it all aged terrifically. Maybe not all of it, but I think the other thing is the Dennis Dunn character isn't necessarily like it's played for laughs of how obnoxious he is, but you want to see him live. So yeah, Prince of Darkness. That's my 11-1 to follow up Terrified.
Have either of you guys seen Prince of Darkness?
No, I have not.
All right, in that case, I don't feel bad like talking about it a little bit, but this film has Tim. I think it's like a 7 to 8 minute opening where it's one note from Carpenter's score and then it slowly builds. And as that note is building, it's one of my favorite openings to a horror film ever. It cuts between 2 or 3 different narratives that you're getting important pieces. You're getting a priest dying, you're getting insects culminating and coming together in these macro shots of like the grass. And as that note is turning into 2 and 3 notes and slowly building, it all harmonizes and it gets really just really intense. And then finally, you see the title Prince of Darkness. Like after all of this buildup, where you almost forgot about credits and you think, a lot of films have done that since, but that was the first movie I ever saw that in. And there's these odd moments where the first hour is so high quality, metaphysical, like really deep conversation, and it seems so serious, and it's about like good and evil being like this timeless entity, like a sentient being that's been held by the Catholic Church to try and keep it from getting stronger. But what it's been doing for these hundreds and hundreds of years is slowly rebuilding itself and getting stronger. And it gets to a point where it can now control lower life forms like insects. And there's a group of homeless people that are all like off their meds, and it's able to kind of control them. And what's weird about the film is it goes from that to a somewhat batshit crazy third act that, as much as I enjoy it, it really is at odds with the restrained, creepy atmosphere of the first hour. And I think that, along with a few inclusions of, there's a woman named Susan who works in radiology, and it almost becomes a drinking game, the amount of times different people go, "Hey, have you seen Susan?" And then someone will be like, "Susan? Oh, from radiology? Yeah, I'm looking for Susan from radiology."
Have you seen Susan? Who? Radiologist, glasses.
Oh yeah, she's right outside.
That happens a lot. And there's one other guy who literally says, "This is crazy, I'm out of here. This is caca." And when he says caca, it's caca. So it absolutely upsets me because I hate that word. Is so cringy to me, and it happens. But then he reiterates it and says it again.
This is a joke. This is caca.
How did that line get in this script twice? It absolutely kills like 45 minutes of awesome buildup. And then you're just like, what am I watching? Is this like Ash vs. Evil Dead? Or is this like this metaphysical thing about like good and evil? But it's a fucking awesome, flawed movie. It is flawed, but there's so much good you can gain from it that I think that the parts that don't gel right, it's watching a guy swing for the fence with not a lot of money, and he almost knocks it over the fence. And if you kind of delete the missteps and then just look at the whole thing as a whole, because I think he sticks the landing. The ending's really cool. And it really is like a what the fuck moment.
That last shot.
So I would give it a B+. It could have been an A+, but yeah, there's some caca thrown in throughout there.
I mean, this was during a time where like streaming, Netflix was only known as a DVD distributor at that point. When I was a huge fan of like The Thing, I was a huge fan of like the Halloween movies, And I had just discovered that, like, what's this? There's other John Carpenter. There's a movie called Prince of Darkness that I have never heard of. And then, like, his other one. And I ended up finding it on Netflix at the time for them to send me the DVD. And I had to, like, I was on a wait list because they must have one copy that gets shipped between, I don't know, probably the same 3 people forever. So it finally showed up for me. And it was kind of, you hit a wall in, I've found all the horror I can during that time, and then this like helped me break through the wall to be like, oh wait, there is so much more that I haven't seen yet. And this kind of started into all of that. And then I found out like, oh, I found The Burning, I found like all these other movies that it's just like, if it didn't come on TV at the time when I was growing up, I couldn't find it. Now I'm actively searching and finding it myself. So thank you, Prince of Darkness.
Tim, do you have a 4K player and a 4K TV? If you don't own it, Scream Factory put out a bunch of 4 Carpenter films separately, but you could buy, because 4K is region free, you could buy it's a British release, Canal Films. You get, let me see if I get this right. You get Prince of Darkness, you get Escape from New York, you get They Live, and The Fog. All 4 of those discs are the exact same transfers and the same Atmos sound as the US releases, but they're all in one box set. And it cost about the price of one of the movies from.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's like a no-brainer. And the 4K on They Live, and especially on Prince of Darkness, is amazing. Because Prince of Darkness is such a dark movie. Seeing that HDR on that film, it pops those, like the green of Satan, the Satan green is so amazing. But yeah, it's definitely, you could borrow mine if you want to just check them out. But
yeah. Because so originally I was fighting with myself on The Fog has to make this list, and it was going to be in the Prince of Darkness slot, because The Fog is like one of my 3 favorite movies.
Yeah.
And then because to me, it always is the perfect midnight movie. And then I'm like, well, it's not a midnight movie. It's 11 to 1 slot. It'll be Prince of Darkness.
Well, I was going to save this for the end, but you said extras, like thrown-ins. The Fog is in there, because it's like, I was so sad I couldn't fit it into this 6. It has to be mentioned, because The Fog's awesome.
Yeah.
Just don't call it The Mist. So
The Foggy Mist.
Well, when you watch The Mist, no one calls The Mist Fog, and when you watch The Fog, no one says Mist. They just can't, because the titles of the movie. But it's odd, because I always call it Fog. So if I was in The Mist, I would be like, something in the fog took John, and they would be like, it's The Mist. So like, no, that shit's
Kill
Fog.
him.
I don't know. I'm from New England. That shit's Fog.
So Dean, your 11 to 1 slot. What do we got?
11 to 1 slot. So The Cabin in the Woods, It Follows, kind of comedy horror to just straight creepy horror. And now we're going to whiplash back to quote-unquote horror. This is from 1990. It is what many would say, quote-unquote, the worst film of all time. It's Troll 2. Oh my God! My midnight movie.
Well,
because
I'm out.
Oh, shit. Do you have that on there?
No.
Oh, but yeah, you hate bad movies.
Violently opposed to Troll 2.
Jerry
Hey, don't piss on hospitality.
Yeah, I think so. For the 3rd movie, it's like I want to get some energy back into the room with
laughter,
laughter, and probably a Rocky Horror-esque. Everybody's saying lines and just kind of cheering on the movie, just to keep morale and keep energy levels up.
Freddy Got Fingered.
Great horror movie.
It is
Troll 2. If you missed it, yeah, I missed the boat on Mystery Science Theater and like just riffing on like bad movies until I was older, and just the concept of like finding the enjoyment of like objectively bad movies. I really fell into probably like 10 years ago, like just really enjoying schlock, I guess. it's that movie became a cult, what they call cult movie, in its aftermath, and it's so perfectly bad, I guess. Like, it's just one of those movies. It's one of the quintessentials, and the fact that it's a horror movie, a not really sequel to the first movie, Troll. I think the only thing that it shares is the monsters turn things into plants.
There aren't
But
even
then this
trolls
one
in it.
Yeah, they're not trolls, they're goblins.
I think that might have been a little bit of I think that would have eased me into the movie a bit more, because I had expectation the whole time you showed it to me that I was going to see trolls, and not at a single point was I shown a troll, and I was very disappointed, and I think that elevated my hatred for this.
So it was false advertising. That was
Completely.
That was your problem with the movie.
If you're going to show me Spider-Man, I expect to see fucking Spider-Man, but this was not Spider-Man. This was like Revenge of the Plants.
It shouldn't have been Troll 2. It should have been Goblin 1.
Yes.
That's fair.
Yeah, I didn't know I didn't know when I'd seen it, but it was made under the name Goblin, and then they just marketed it as, no, we're changing the name. They kind of look like the troll from Troll 1, and they turn into plants. That's about it.
The classic, was it Zombie 2 or Jaws 5?
Are you talking about? Oh no, I thought you were talking about the director, because he made Zombie 4.
Right.
Oh,
it's called After Death, but it has nothing to do with zombie. I mean, he's an Italian director, and they just would look at what's popular and just retitle it. It didn't matter if it had anything to do with it at all. There's an Italian film series where they actually put Jack Nicholson, a painting of Jack Nicholson from The Shining, like standing over this cabin, but it has nothing to do with the movie at all. I hate Troll 2, but I'm glad you put it on the list, but I hate it because Troll 1 is actually really fun. Like, I like the original Troll.
I watched the trailer. I have not seen that one, and it looks kind of bonkers too. Like it and the concept is completely different from. I know they had nothing to do with each other, but I just didn't really know how different it was.
So I always thought it was weird in Troll 1 how there's the little boy who finds his neighbor who helps teaching him magic because of all the trolls in the house or whatever. And his name in the movie is Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. Thank you. I was going to mention that.
Yeah,
Harry
and I was
Potter
like...
dude, it's ridiculous.
And I was like, oh, so there's a little boy Harry Potter learning magic.
J.K. Rowling saw that fucking movie. She claims she didn't. I don't believe it. She saw it.
That's a weird coincidence.
Harry Potter, doesn't he have a scar too?
Probably.
No, I think he does. He gets hit in the head. And then the whole point is that this little troll, this evil fucking troll, starts turning the sleazy renters in this apartment complex. They crack open. They turn into seed pods. They crack open, and like mythical like greenery grows out of them and turns the rooms into like a new environment. So, and then they're populated by little creatures. So yeah, JK should just own up to it. She totally saw that movie.
I'm sure she'll tweet about it eventually.
And Michael Moriarty stars in Troll. So.
Yeah, beaming his performance in from space. Like, I love Michael Moriarty, but I always feel like whenever he shows up, it's like, there's something off kilter with all of his characters.
Yeah, it's Michael Moriarty.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Because all that shit in Q with him playing piano and stuff, that's all riffed on. He ad-libbed so much, and he actually plays piano. So he just added that to the movie. This whole subplot of him playing piano. We're getting way off.
If nothing else, Troll 2, in 2009, the little boy grown up, made a documentary called Best Worst Movie. And it's just kind of fascinating. It follows George Hardy, I think his name is.
It's
the
like
guy that plays the dad. It is. It's really interesting, just that it follows him discovering the cult status of the movie and how much people, love it for different reasons than what they made it.
Yeah.
And how much disdain the director has for like the kind of jokes that are made about the movie, but how much every actor reacts to, I guess, the fame of the movie at that point. It's just a really interesting documentary to go along with the movie.
You could pair,
I laughed.
You could pair that documentary with Life After Flash, and you'll feel so much better about your own life. Life After Flash is as sad as the documentary you're talking about.
Okay.
It's the guy who played Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon,
yeah,
right.
And he just had all these anger management issues and was a total dick. And then he kind of finds redemption a little, but he's still kind of bitter, like a bitter dude.
Right.
But imagine starring in a movie and then you go see it in the theater and you find out in the theater that you were redubbed by a different actor, even though you speak English, because your performance was so bad. That's essentially his story.
Shit.
He's known for one thing, and it's not even his voice in the movie.
I didn't know that.
But he could totally get drinks with Claudio Fragasso, and they could hang out together.
Yeah, for sure.
Dean, Troll 2, keeping your
2.
energy alive there. Which brings us to whatever the next life cycle of the xenomorph is.
Don't make fun of me.
No, it's because I genuinely forgot what would be the next on the list. Is it just the actual xenomorph?
No,
we have the chest burster.
So I thought you included that in the previous.
That was the face hugger. You know Alien. Come on, Tim.
I've never seen
You know
it.
the life cycle of the xenomorph.
That's the one with Ron Perlman, right?
Oh, boy.
So we have the chest burster. So in this case, it is the utter shock value. And I also went with very gory, too. And this
Delicious.
choice is a bit of a curveball because this one I actually picked Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Did you see the way those guys looked at us?
Who wants to go skinny dipping?
No.
We got your friend!
They captured Allison!
Oh, it's the pancakes. You hate pancakes. I'm gonna make you something else.
What am I doing here?
Fell into the water. Dove in and rescued you. We'll go find your friends. You should relax. Tucker and Dale are on the case.
What is this place?
It's just a cabin. It doesn't mean they're psycho killers.
Then why don't you go in there and talk to them?
All right. Maybe I will. I said maybe.
It's extremely gory, just like its namesake, but also just it takes every trope and kind of turns it on its head because the whole time you're watching it, we have discussed this on a previous episode of ours, but as you're watching it, it portrays it like it's going to be that typical, redneck horror kind of slasher thing. And you come to find out that they're not the bad guys. In fact, they're actually like the main heroes through this whole thing. And these college kids that are suspecting them to have kidnapped their friend actually rescued her because she was about to drown. So they're trying to rescue her throughout this entire process, and they're pretty much getting themselves killed through the entirety of it. They just had one doozy of a day.
I really
That
left
movie's
my ass off
awesome.
of this movie.
I first watched it at your shop, actually.
I also would appreciate, Nick, from this point on, while we talk about this film, you will refer to them as college kids! Not college.
I forget, what is the... Maybe I asked you this last time. What is the third act? Like, we know that it's a whole mistaken, it's a misunderstanding.
The entire
Like,
movie is about miscommunication, and it's just one thing piling on another. It kind of becomes almost a real slasher movie. Kind of. It doesn't ruin what it did, but there is a killer. I'm figuring people.
Right.
This is a movie that maybe a lot of people haven't seen, so I don't want to give too much away. There is a certain kid that does have a lineage with a family. And then Tucker and Dale end up actually having to be heroes and thwart a real serial killer or slasher killer.
That was the third part of the movie I was forgetting.
If I recall, the movie opens up with there being, actually the movie opens up with like a camera thing, but then they talk about like there was an attack or something years ago on like a couple or something. So I don't know I don't remember if they set it up that they then cut over to Tucker and Dale, that you're assuming that
they misdirect you to think.
Yeah.
They make it, they misdirect you so that as a viewer, you could see where the college kids would think they're the killers. But from the rip, they let you know that Tucker and Dale are innocent. Like from the very beginning, you know that they're not bad guys at all.
Yeah.
They don't do that, but they misdirect the other cast members so that you could see where they believe it. And then when Tucker and Dale come to the realization that the college kids must be having a suicide pact and killing each other, that's when it kicks into like genius gear. And I'm just like, I was along for the ride. I'm like, no matter what they do, I'm down with it. And they hold the tone perfectly. They balance it really, really well. So, and you really, really like both of them. I buy their friendship for real. And I think the film would not work if you didn't genuinely like Tucker and Dale. And usually I don't like characters. There's a lot of like independent films with two guys that like play off each other. And I usually do not like them. Like John dies at the end, which is a whole other podcast. One of the guys I think sells it well. And the other guy, I kind of don't like him as much. And it really keeps the film, I think, from soaring a little sometimes, but that's just me. And
not to digress, the book honestly was 1,000 times better, and he
Yeah,
did
but
a
the
poor
movie
job of
couldn't-
adapting it.
God.
Yeah.
They barely scratched into the surface of that book. It really is a truncated, weird Cliff Notes version of the book. And that's Don Coscarelli, who made Bubba Hotep and Phantasm films. He's very much an auteur and a maverick. And if he bent over for studios, he probably could have gotten more money to make that film. But he went like the Romero route. You know, I'll make it my way with less money. And I commend him for it because it's got some good stuff in it. It's just a little tough sell on most people. So
it would have definitely benefited from being a mini series or
oh fuck yeah, dude. Yeah, absolutely.
The book itself for the length it is, there's very distinct like segments throughout the entire thing in terms of kind of the journey, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it seems like the whole thing's wrapping up. Well, the whole thing wraps up and you're halfway through the book and now you have this whole back end happening like afterwards. To put that in like 90 minutes it's an impossible task.
And then you also have This Book Is Made of Spiders after that book. So
yeah. And then I think there's the third one. I haven't read the third one yet.
Nor have I. Even still, though, that's a fun movie. Like I wanted a little more from it, but it's still really cool.
And Tucker and Dale, since seeing that, I have always been on the search for like a good horror comedy that hits like that Tucker and Dale vibe. And I mean, I found some good horror comedies, but nothing that's like, oh, if you like Tucker and Dale, here's the other logical choice. It's like, if you like Tucker and Dale, here's other horror comedies, but they're not like
No, Tucker and Dale is a true gem. Like it really is, because I agree with you guys. Like when I watch a horror comedy that gets a lot of fanfare, in the back of my mind, I'm kind of judging it against like the bell curve of having like Tucker and Dale, you know, and they rarely get there. Like it very rarely is a horror comedy as well conceived and executed as that film. It really is. It's a top-notch horror comedy. It's way up there. So
yeah, great pick.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are killing it with these picks. They're really good.
Which now that brings us to your 11-to-1 slot, aka the Midnight movie.
This is too easy because 11-to-1 means midnight's happening. And from the director of Animal House, a different kind of animal, 1981's An American Werewolf in London.
For the first 23 years of David Kessler's life, he was only human. Then one night he took a walk on the moors.
Beware the moonlights.
Is David behaving strangely?
Are you all right now?
I'll let you know the next full moon.
Tomorrow night's the full moon. You're gonna change.
From the director of Animal House, a different kind of animal, An American Werewolf in London, rated R.
In my opinion, the best horror comedy ever made. Like maybe you could argue Young Frankenstein, but that's a different kind of horror comedy. But for anyone who doesn't know, two American kids traveling through Europe, they get attacked by a werewolf. One of them becomes a werewolf, and the other one who got killed keeps coming back as a harbinger of things to come. And he's trying to convince his friend, you have to kill yourself or you're going to become a werewolf and destroy people's lives. And I know you're a good dude. You don't want to do that. So kill yourself and hang out with me. It should not work in any way, but it works in every way. I'll let you guys chime in a bit right now because I'm sure most of you have seen it.
Yeah.
No? You never seen it?
Wait, Tim, you haven't seen it?
So
I was going to say,
I think the horror comedy aspect of it, the entire comedy is Griffin Dunn.
Oh God, am I asleep now or what?
So you know what she does? She's so grief-stricken. She runs to find solace in Mark Levine's bed.
Mark Levine?
An asshole. Life mocks me even in death.
Just having Griffin Dunn. I feel like if it wasn't him or not that character, then I still would enjoy the movie, but I feel like that's what's really the driving heart of the whole thing for me.
Yeah. Well, I'll lay it out as like, I don't know the number I'll stop at, but I'm just going to start listing it in number format. So like number 1, amazing soundtrack. Every song deals with the moon or the nighttime.
Yeah.
Number 2, all the key performances are amazing. You've got a slew of British character actors that all bring that era of polish to a film that wouldn't work as well as it did without them. There's jokes being told at the Slaughtered Lamb pub. There's attitude coming from police chiefs versus doctors, but it all works beautifully because they're seasoned British actors. You've got Frank Oz making a really awesome cameo. You've got Jenny Agutter, such a gorgeous lady, probably my earliest like movie crush. She's actually in Avengers, which is crazy to see her in Avengers, but she's amazing. You then have the Rick Baker broad daylight werewolf transformation that was the reason the Special Effects Makeup Academy Award was created. The fucking thing is so good that the Academy was like, I guess we need to make a prosthetic makeup like Oscar. And he won it like rightfully. And it's just one of those movies that if you love comedy, I think it's John Landis's best movie. And I think it's hard to not have a great time watching this film. It's sleazy where it needs to be. It's incredibly violent, but it's kind of hysterical throughout the whole thing. And it never lets up. And it ends so abruptly. It ends in a way that one of those older Hammer movies or Universal, when you're watching an old Hollywood movie, you'll have this climax and then like a title card that's like the end and it's over. And you're like, whoa, movie's over? Like, wow, it's over. This movie ends like on a dime. It's just over. But I love it. And I highly recommend that both of you watch it because it's more comedy than it is horror.
Yeah.
I have seen this movie, but it's been a long time, and I can only remember pieces
Bits
of the
and
movie.
pieces.
The dream, the attack, the dream sequences, the transformation, pretty much the end, and the several dead people that show up along the way.
And that film actually directly changed John Carpenter's Christine, because Christine, the novel, has the villainous presence of Christine manifesting itself in the back seat and like telling Arnie what to do and like controlling him. And when Carpenter watched American Werewolf, he was like, we absolutely can't have an undead character like telling our protagonist what to do. So they cut that whole sequence out of the movie, and they never filmed it or anything. But yeah, like American Werewolf, it's a movie that I never get tired of watching. I can always put it on, and it puts me in a good mood. It puts clients in a good mood. Like when people come in and they want something that they'll remember, I'll usually throw that on, and they'll like tell their friends about it. And it's pretty impressive for a film from 1981 to actually captivate 19-year-olds now. Like that says something about the film.
Absolutely.
And now I think, was this the one that was linked with, was it The Howling? Where he was originally supposed to do the effects for that, but then there was the agreement of like, oh, we're up and running on American Werewolf. We need you back to work on this.
John Landis worked with Rick Baker as far back as Schlock. And Landis wrote American Werewolf when he was 18 or 19. He was in, I think he was in Hungary or something. And he ended up like being inspired, and he wrote this script. And back then he told Rick Baker, you're going to do the effects. And it took about, I think, 25 or 30 years to get it made. And in the course of that time frame, he accepted The Howling from Joe Dante, who did Gremlins. Yeah. And then he got called by Landis to say, we're doing it. And when he told Landis what he was doing, Landis kind of flipped on him and was like, dude, you're quitting that. You have to do this. So he set up Dante with Rob Bottin, because Bottin was a protege of his. And then Rick Baker kind of shot himself in the foot, because Rob Bottin was a teenager. So he gave Bottin all of his tutelage and his ideas for how he was going to do it. So after giving Rob Bottin all these concepts, Landis was like, dude, what? Like, you just gave him everything you're going to do for me. And that's where the whole brightly lit living room happened, because he was like, we have to do something different from Howling. So they decided to have him transform in a brightly lit room. So,
and it got him the award.
Yeah. And that whole Chango head thing with the actual one shot of that head growing, he was trying to use silicone, but it was a new material, and he accidentally mixed too much plasticizer in the silicone, so it never fully cured. And instead of calling that a mistake, he just tried to push a skull into it. And when he pushed that form, it stretched the silicone, and they said, screw it, let's use this. And that's how that came to be. But they're both great movies.
Happy little accident.
The Howling is a very good film in and of itself, for sure. But the werewolf stuff is better in American Werewolf. It just is.
Yeah, but what about American Werewolf in Paris? That's another show.
Let's never talk about that.
So American Werewolf in Paris. I don't hate the movie. I think it's not a good sequel to American Werewolf in London, but completely separate as like a 2000s film. It's fun, but I always laugh at when the friend is like hung up on the cross because they're going to sacrifice him. Then he escapes and he runs over the hill, and all the police arrive and they see the guy run. So anyway, we're now past the halfway mark. We're at our 1 to 3 slot, and pretty much all I have to say about that is we're past the post-midnight slot where kind of reality and plot start to become unhinged. So they will make cemeteries their cathedrals, and the cities will be your tombs. It is Lamberto Bava's Demons.
The preview you are about to watch is for a movie that is unlike any you have ever seen before. It is for a movie that goes beyond temporary fear to everlasting terror. It is a movie called Demons. They will make cemeteries their cathedrals, and the cities will be your tombs. Will you survive it? Demons.
I was gonna say, there's like Night of the Demons, other demon movies. I was like, is this the one we've seen at the Brattle?
The Brattle did a special 35mm screening of it one year in October, and Dean palled along with me, and we watched it, and it
was a lot of fun.
It was off my bucket list. So this is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. But so it's written by Lamberto Bava, son of Mario Bava, who did a couple movies. And also worked with Dario Argento on this one, because this was after Dario had just gotten off, I think, Phenomena. I can't do it without doing the... So it was just after he had gotten off Phenomenon, and he was looking to produce more films, evidently, so he ended up kind of getting into working on Demons with Lamberto. This one, from everything in this movie, the Claudio Simonetti score, people might know him from like Goblin, who worked extensively with Argento, but the effects, I think it was like Sergio Stivoletti or something, but it's these two friends who end up, like, they're supposed to be going to class, they get stopped by some random guy in like a half mask, and he gives them tickets to the screening at this theater that night. So they play hooky, they skip school, they end up going to this screening, they meet these other two boys, they end up like going in as dates and whatnot. And the movie, in the lobby, there is this display with a demon mask that one of the characters is playing around with as a joke and gets scratched, and we think nothing of it until they go into the theater itself to watch the movie, and the movie is about these people going to investigate kind of this like tomb, and they find that inscription there, and they end up finding like the mask and whatnot. And then the girl goes into the bathroom and begins to transform in this gross process into a demon, and then everything just goes haywire from there. It's like the shots in this movie just stick out to me as like when the demon's running up and over the staircase, which you'll see on like the poster, but they use reflective like material for their eyes. So when the light hits them, they kind of reflect. So you just see these like glowing eyes coming out of the fog. And it's just such a great effect that it's a movie that I just get giddy watching every time. And I just always want to suggest it to people. But because of the amount of gore and the fact that it's kind of wacky, I can't suggest it to like everyone I run into. It's only specific subsets. So
you should suggest it to everyone.
Yeah,
everyone.
I agree.
But yeah, Dean, I'm glad you had fun with it when we saw it at the theater there.
For sure.
But it's
cool to see a film print of it as well.
Yeah. It's just the idea of sitting in a theater watching a movie about people going to a theater that then gets infested by demons is like an art imitating life kind of deal that I can just get behind. But yeah, it's definitely into that time frame when, granted, not all the plot always makes sense. There's certain points that it's like, it seems disconnected. We have these bikers doing coke in the car that are like driving around as like a B story that they end up eventually showing up, and they're listening to like Billy Idol in their car in this like Italian movie the entire time. But it's all of these weird things that somehow make this movie just a blast. Even going into Demons 2, a lot of the same actors appear in that one as different characters, also directed by Lamberto Bava, but it's a kind of continuation of that fun before we get into something like Demons 3, which ends up becoming The Church, which was Michelle Soavi.
So I can never Savoy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know
the one who did Stage Fright.
Yeah, but he's awesome. He did Stage Fright.
Oh yeah,
Church, and he also did Cemetery Man.
Yeah,
Delamorte. Yeah,
and actually, I think he's the one in the half mask passing out the tickets in the beginning of Demons.
He is,
because he was also the assistant director.
He's also the demon that comes out of the person's back. But yeah, that movie, like both Demons, are hardcore Italian. I don't even mean hardcore like hardcore horror. They're not, but they're an absolutely hardcore Italian production where you get your corny dubbing, you get people that are supposed to be punks that don't look punk, people that are supposed to be bikers that don't look biker. It's just a lot of acid wash denim and a lot of foofy hair. It's so corny, but then it's so vicious. And I think it was meta way before like Scream and shit like that. You know, it's a fun ride. I love that. I love Demons. So fun. Demons 2 is really good too. It grew on me as a kid. I wanted like more of Demons, and it's so different, but I like it. It's like a different kind of variation of it. The way there's the TV screens and all that kind of stuff.
I have never heard of this.
It's fun. It's also on Shudder.
Yeah.
Demons 1, Demons 2, and I don't think The Church is.
Nick, there's super weird shit in it, like a blind guy just sitting there intently watching this movie when you know he can't be watching it, but he's acting like he's seeing it. It's so weird. The movie's odd. It's like just an odd duck.
They're trying to escape and they end up in like this one room under the theater or something, and then for some reason all the women in the room just start screaming, and then they just stop and they never address what happened. It just goes on to the next scene. So there's stuff like that, but there's also a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. And the Metropole Theater is so cool looking. It's just like, it's a character in and of itself, because the whole thing takes place in this movie theater. So if you love movies, it has that added benefit. Like when you watch the Blob remake, you can't help but love the whole sequence in the movie theater.
Yeah. And plus, when you're introduced to the pimp, he's going to become your favorite character.
Yes, because his dubbing it's so stereotypical. It's like exactly what you want a pimp to sound like. Exactly.
And then he like takes charge of the whole operation. You're just like, yeah, I'm behind you, man.
He's like, I'm gonna bitch slap these demons. Just stand behind me.
Where's the projection booth?
Upstairs, next to the gallery.
Right, we'll all go up there together. If we stick together, no one gets hurt. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Oh my God.
That was the first and only time I'd seen it, but I don't remember a whole lot of the movie, but I just remember that it was a good night and I enjoyed it for sure.
So, Demons, 1 to 3 slot.
Excellent.
Dean, did you also have Demons?
Demons 2, actually. Right next. So 11 to 1 was Troll 2. So you had your ridiculous fun. At least I hope you did, because I would have had a lot of fun during Troll 2. So it's time to remind you why you're here and to scare you / just kind of mentally fuck with you again. This one, again, suffers from recency bias. That's because I don't really rewatch horror a lot. But this movie just fucked me up for a couple days. There were some images from this movie that I couldn't shake from my head when I would just close my eyes to either go to sleep or I'm in the shower washing my hair. I'm just like, I can't get these images out of my head. And that would be 2018's Hereditary.
Sorry, baby grandma.
You know you were her favorite.
Who's gonna take care of me when you die?
She isn't gone. You know you were her favorite. I swear I can feel her in the room. You know you were her favorite, right? Something is happening. I think my mother put a curse on us.
Mom? I need to call the police.
The police can't help us.
Mom?
You know you were her favorite, right?
Hereditary in theaters this Friday.
And this is the 1 to 3 time slot, so it's kind of like you're starting to get tired, and it's a bit of a slow burn, but it doesn't really, it's not really slow the whole time. It's just those freaky moments kind of pick up like halfway into the movie at least, so you're not waiting that long for.
There's like spikes here and there, so it's not just all
right. And going into this movie, I especially, I think I might have seen a trailer a little bit maybe, but I won't say it's totally like Ned Stark syndrome, but there's a death that you're like, oh, I thought this person was like a central figure just based on the marketing, and it kind of like throws you for a loop when this person dies and really kicks the rest of the plot into gear kind of midway through the movie.
It's that Hitchcock trick, the Hitchcock trick.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well, think of Hitchcock's 1960 classic.
Just you set them up, and then all of a sudden I think it was like 35 minutes in, and then they're gone.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but just the images. I mean, this movie's. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot and plenty of fucked up stuff, but it messed me up for a couple of days. This movie particularly. I'm sure you could probably name a lot of movies like, yeah, if you think that's bad, check this.
My 3 to 5 is Salo.
But yeah, I know it's a more recent entry. I think it was this director's first big feature.
It was his first.
Then he did Midsommar.
First full length feature.
Full length feature,
yeah, for sure.
I've not seen Midsommar. After seeing Hereditary, I've heard Midsommar is in a different way, just as a kind of. But so I don't know if I'll be able to get myself sit down to watch that. But I thought this is a kind of a whiplash again from Troll 2. Very opposite kind of movie. Like it's like, whoa, wait, just kind of like kind of a roller coaster on back and forth on the horror. That was kind of what I was going for. Yeah, I don't know what you guys think of this movie, but it really unnerved
so far
me
your marathon is like the
days.
film equivalent of high intensity cardio, of just like bursts really hard, and then you like rest and then burst.
Well,
Troll 2,
me,
Hereditary.
When I think of Hereditary, I think of seeing it in the theater for the first time. There was so much fanfare with like little one-liner review quips that I read nothing about it. And I knew I liked the cast, but I didn't want to know anything about it. And what I saw that night, I think was the best horror movie of that year. Like for me, hands down, best horror movie of that year. I adore the fact that it is a dysfunctional family drama, and then they fold in supernatural elements. The misdirection of 3 different rug pulls that I didn't see coming. There's a moment in that film where it appears to be going in a Ouija board kind of direction, and I was so bummed out. Like I was in the theater, and when it started turning into that, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. This is like The Conjuring all over again, where I watched the first 2 acts of The Conjuring I thought were really solid, and I could not stand the 3rd act. This film, to me, is like Tarantino doing horror, because I recognize the influences in the film, but that director kind of made his own like wine reduction sauce of terror, and he took the right parts of themes that are so good that it's not fair to say you can never do that again. Like some themes are really good, so you have to tell them in different ways. You can't just be like, this is like The Exorcist, so it's a piece of shit. Because Hereditary is not like The Exorcist, but I hear that a lot from people. I loved it. I love how when you watch it again, you can piece together what seems like narrative flaws. It's actually very tightly constructed. It's gorgeously shot. And And when you think about an experience where terror actually becomes an experience where it's taking you to places where you feel heightened. Like what I like about being scared, and I kind of don't get scared because I'd be lying if I said I did. Like jump scares are easy to earn. Like you just fucking make a jump
to startle,
and there it is.
Sure.
But the emotional journey that Hereditary takes you on, if you're into it, if you're making fun of it, fine. Because a lot of people make fun of Peter crying and the way he cries. That disturbed me because I felt like if a spider lands on me while I'm watching TV, I regress into this completely belligerent idiot. And it's just a little spider that landed on me. So when he starts losing his shit, I get it. And it felt good. Like I was like, I'm with this kid on this fucked up journey. And the roller coaster, the way that film ratchets up, the moment you see his mom on the ceiling and it's in that frame for a long time, once that happens, I feel like Hereditary says, all right, you've rolled with us on this slow incline. Now you're going down the fucking roller coaster like full speed. And people that don't get that film and hate it for that should just shut the hell up, because people hate that movie. And I guarantee you they do not get it. And it's not super deep. It really isn't. It's actually like some universal themes folded in with the concept of a certain group of people that have been failing at their task for generations. And we're getting to witness that group of people finally succeeding. And to me, it's such a cool thing to watch. And it's a movie that it sounds like hyperbole if I really talk about how beautifully constructed I think that film is, but it really is. Like Toni Collette not getting even nominated shows you what a joke the Academy is, because like Tim had mentioned earlier, horror is looked down upon, but when when an audience is scared, every other sense is heightened. So you can actually like break that wall down and affect people in a different way. And you specifically said it fucked you up for a couple days. You're not going to get that from a comedy or even a drama. A drama might make you think about it for a couple of days, but you won't feel like you need to shower and it still won't come off. Hereditary, that mom beating her head against that fucking attic, dude, like, or the sound coming from a certain back and forth seesaw movement on her neck, that shit does not go away. And I think that's quite an achievement. It is not the greatest movie ever made, but as a debut, like that is one hell of a debut. James Wan could learn a whole bunch of shit from that director. Like that's my opinion. But I love Hereditary.
And it's so odd because for a movie that has such a hopeless, dark ending to it, I still ended up enjoying. Like, there's a lot of movies that have dark endings, and you're like, well, that kind of ruined my enjoyment of it, depending on how it goes out. But like this one, you still enjoy your time, even though there's nothing enjoyable about this movie, kind of beginning to end there. It's just, it's bleak.
Yeah, it's a weird in that, like, not that it's, I liken it to drugs, but like I would want to watch it again, but I'd be afraid to like watch it again. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I should watch it again, but I'd be like, man, should I really watch this movie? Because I mean, it was good. It freaked me out, but I didn't hate it. It was that effective that it was just like,
it's just long enough that
crazy
you forgot
experience for me.
The lesson you learned the first time, but you remember the part you liked, and it's like, yeah, I can go again.
I can now think about the movie and then forget it, once I'm done,
I would also
having to talk about it.
I would like to apologize if I seemed a little emotionally amped and ranty about Hereditary. But again, it goes back to that thing of, I see film as art and not in it. I mean, there's total popcorn movies. Like that is an art in and of itself, just a fun, stupid movie. But I really love helping people get into cinema that maybe they wouldn't normally get into. And it truly does bother me that a trend in the last 10 years has been a lot of people complaining about nothing new being made. I know I already talked about this, but people will bitch that, especially in the horror genre, they're just like, it's just remakes and reboots. But you chose It Follows, You chose Hereditary. Those are two unique stories. It doesn't matter if you love them, but they're unique ideas and they get such a polarizing critical review. And when someone talks about how Hereditary is a piece of shit, how do you call a film that accomplished a piece of shit? Like, it's just not a piece of shit. Rob Zombie's 31 is a piece of shit. There's a total difference.
He listens to the show.
Okay. Oh, wow.
We're not going to get that Munsters money now.
No, we mentioned enough unique films that he'll just go watch them and then cast one of those supporting actors in his movie and make them spit terrible fucking dialogue while his wife laughs. But anyway.
So look for Gabriel Byrne as Lurch.
Alfred Molina.
So if you liked Hereditary, a movie on a similar vein, have you seen the movie Housewife?
Never heard of it.
So Housewife, I think, is still on Shudder, but watching Hereditary, or watching that the first time, when it finished, it just gave me Hereditary vibes, just in terms of kind of the overall feel by the end of the movie itself. But it's on a much more, it's a little less on the supernatural, folksy side. It's a little more on the cosmic side of things.
No, I don't think I've ever heard of Housewife.
Yeah, it's an odd movie, and I'm still on the fence on where I land with it. But it's got me enough that I want to revisit it at some point. But it definitely gave me kind of a Hereditary feel by the end of it. So there's something else for you, Dean.
And if you guys like that, check out Kill List by Ben Wheatley, because Kill List is an awesome folk horror movie, and it feels more like a Hitman movie with an element of supernatural thrown in, but it's super classy, very talky, but it's great. I think you'll like it.
Yes.
So what's that?
Dean, that was your 1 to 3, and our other 2 extra picks in there. So Nick, where are the Xenomorphs?
This is your slasher flick.
But you hate slashers.
Yeah, there's a couple. They're
okay.
When you compare like Tim's list of movies versus mine, you can tell they're just on two different sides of the fence. I actually had an honorable mention for this one because I just changed it in the last like 10 minutes.
Oh wow.
But, so I'm moving that to an honorable mentions list instead because it does bend the rules a little bit. It's not a horror movie per se, but as we mentioned in the beginning half, horror isn't explicitly just one specific type. There are subgenres.
For sure.
That one would have fell more into that action scene versus it being listed under horror. But I wanted to stay within the true horror genre. So I'm going to go with my favorite slasher, Child's Play.
Something has moved with the Barkley family. And so has terror. Child's Play. Child's Play. Rated R.
Starts Wednesday, November 9th at a theater near you.
So this one is, it's a TV show now, which I haven't gotten around to watching because it's actually on TV and I don't have cable. But it follows a serial killer who follows like dark voodoo magic. He gets caught, and as he's running away from the police, he gets shot. He stumbles while bleeding out into a toy shop, and he uses that black magic voodoo stuff to transpose his soul into a doll. And it's one of the hottest selling toys on the market at the time. And over the course of the movie, the doll ends up in the possession of a single mom just wanting to get the hottest selling toy for her son. And through the course of the movie, the kid knows that the doll is real, but everyone else doesn't, and they think it's a joke. But people slowly start dying off around him, and the whole time the doll, Chucky, has his own kind of vendetta, and he has his own mission objective, and eventually he wants to move his soul back into a living person. But I've always been a fan of this. Each single one of the classic trilogy, I feel, is a lot more, it has a lot more substance than the more modern takes like Seed and Bride of Chucky, where it started to take more of a comedic approach, and the more recent retellings with Cult and
then the reboot, just the straight reboot.
I also liked the Mark Hamill one a lot. I don't know anyone else that has actually seen it, but they take the same concept of just a child's toy gone rampant, but take it into a slightly different direction. And I really appreciated the twist that they did on it, only because it's just something different. And instead of it just being a serial killer that's now living inside of a doll, it's what happens when you take artificial intelligence and you teach it and it tries to be what you teach it. It's kind of like, be careful, not like be careful what you wish for, but more just you expect it to act a certain way, but because of its own way of learning, it's trying to please you, but it doesn't know the moral rights and wrongs that killing people is not a right thing to do, even though it's just trying to be a people pleaser.
Yeah.
It's a pint-sized Skynet. But anyway,
yeah. It's or if it reminds me of like if you ever saw the movie Evolver, it was like a made for TV. Yeah. Where it's like, oh, it's the AI used in the kids game, and then it slowly like learns and then develops. But yeah, like I liked the reboot that they did. Granted, not necessarily it's far enough removed from the original spirit of, I feel, Child's Play was, so it doesn't feel like it's trying to do a copy of anything.
Yeah.
And I can enjoy it separately from thinking it along the terms of like, oh yeah, this is a sequel, or this is like trying to redo what Child's Play did. It's like, no, it's its own thing. That's fine. So I can enjoy it. But I think it was born out of the fact that the rights issues of the argument of, was it like one half owned the rights to the name Child's Play, the other half owned the rights to Chucky. So they weren't allowed to do a movie.
Yeah. It's like a Jason situation.
Yeah.
So
that's how we end up with like the Chucky series, but then we end up with this Child's Play movie. But then Child's Play movie couldn't use Chucky, so now it's like Buddy. So yeah, it's all over, but I think it's still an interesting take. But nothing beats the original Child's Play, just if nothing else, just for Brad Dourif.
I was just gonna say that, that's my lasting impact, is just how awesome his vocal performance.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Chucky.
My take on the Child's Play series is I put it in with like Hellraiser series, where Don Mancini and like Tom Holland, the Fright Night guy, they created two really cool movies. Child's Play 1 and 2. 3 is weird, but it's still good. And that original trilogy, I genuinely like those movies. Everything that came after it's such a sea of mediocrity. There's like a good moment here and there in all of those films, but none of them play as well as any of those earlier films. And I have sort of stuck with, I guess I'll watch it, and I wait a while. And I think I've seen Cult and all of those like a year after they came out, because one night I'm just like, I want to like Chucky again. Like, so I give it a shot, and I'm usually disappointed. And it's like, there's 2 or 3 cool kills, but the movies suck. But I've always wanted like a nice resurgence and Chucky getting back to basics. And I actually did watch Chucky, the first episode. I watched it 2 days ago, and I kind of wish that they released more of them so I could have binged it, at least in like a 3 episode kind of sitting, because you're really just getting essentially a pilot where they're trying to set up all these characters. However, I especially think that Nick will like it, is my guess, because it's Don Mancini at the helm, and that's his baby. And it takes Chucky seriously. The same way, like, even if you watch Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, it's pure slapstick, but they treated the monsters respectfully. And Chucky is still a badass in this, and he's like a real smarmy motherfucker. And Brad Dourif does a great job with him. And something I was surprised about and enjoyed in that one episode, so I only got an hour to like settle into it, but the lead character, the young kid, is actually, he hasn't openly said he's gay, but they've made it very clear that he's gay, and his father is super homophobic. And I noticed the way the internet runs. I noticed a lot of people that pretend to be horror fans, but fucking know nothing about the things they're watching. They're trashing this thing as like woke Chucky and all this bullshit. What they fail to realize is that Don Mancini, who has dedicated his life to making, at least in his eyes, good horror. I mean, you might not like all of the movies that he made, but he's a real deal player in the horror genre, and he's tried to do good things for the genre. He is an openly gay man, and I think it's really cool that whoever he had to talk with and however he needed to play it, I think it's cool that he gets to write a bit of himself into this show of a character that's all his. And I think if you go back to those earlier Child's Play films, that would have been something that I'm sure he mentioned, and I'm sure it just got tabled immediately. Like, we're not doing that. So I don't know how the show's going to play out, but that first episode gives you some really cool Chucky mayhem. It brings in some possible narrative threads that I don't know if they're going to follow through with, but I kind of hope they do, because they're sort of interesting. And one of those threads is, what if the innocent person were complacent with what Chucky was doing? It might change. He might not always be down with it. But in the beginning of this ratcheting up of Chucky's bad deeds, the lead character is sort of like feeling good about it because he's bullied a lot. And here's this little thing that's sticking up for him. And instead of being terrified of him, he's scared of him, but he's also kind of appreciating him. And I think that's very cool. They're also going to give you a backstory of Charles Lee Ray as a child. And I'm a little nervous about that because it's canon to the films. And we all know what Charles Lee Ray is. And I don't really know if we need to be bogged down with, it's like when you watch Daredevil or Punisher, they're like 3 episodes too long because you get the same thing over and over. I don't know if we need like a backstory to Charles Lee Ray. Obviously, he starts killing animals and stuff and then people. I mean, that's where most serial killers come from. It might be awesome. Who knows? But yeah, so with that in mind, the Chucky TV show seems pretty good so far. Much better than a lot of those sequels. I'll say that. So
yeah,
I was a bit apprehensive when I found out that it was actually coming out sooner than later. With COVID, it's just everything's gotten pushed back. A lot of things that were on my radar fell off. And then I started seeing the threads that, Chucky's coming out like fucking tomorrow. Like, oh, that's going to be cool. But I know that by the time I get around to sitting and watching it, I have the intent on just marathoning the whole thing from start to finish.
You probably should.
Yeah. And especially with a show like that, it's tough for me anyway to watch things on a weekly basis. I forget things really quick. By the time you're on episode 15, if you think about it, it's been 15 weeks since you saw the first one. So many things get forgotten. I just don't like doing it like that anymore. So I'm just hoping that by the time the full series comes out, that it's not a one and done and it doesn't do well and they won't renew it for a second season. Because I really did appreciate Curse of Chucky is the first one. And then Cult of Chucky is the second one. The way that they were able to kind of bring Chucky back to his roots after dealing with that like late 90s, early 2000s kind of like horror comedic trend that a lot of movies started to do. I think because of like Scary Movie was so successful, they're like, oh, we can try that too with Chucky. Like Bride of Chucky wasn't as bad compared to like Seed. Seed was just trash in my eyes. But it's just too much like in one direction and it just didn't seem right for the character. So having that poor distaste, because a lot of people didn't like it that way, watching Curse of Chucky and seeing it return to those horror roots was greatly appreciative, and it really revitalized the brand back into how the whole thing started, and I always enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You
showed me Curse, because I had fallen off from it for a while, and then I think you bought like the box set or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I enjoyed Curse. I mean, it's not the same level for me as the originals, but I think it was a step back in the right direction to try to right the ship after kind of falling asleep at the wheel for a couple movies.
Yeah.
But I think it's also a tough killer because it's a doll, and when you think about like Freddy, Jason, they're mostly humanoid characters that can do things humans can do. Chucky's got like a lot of strikes against him in terms of like, it's harder to watch a Chucky film and be like, why aren't you running away? Because it's like Chucky, like you could run away from Chucky. So they really got to come up with some creative ways to get you to be killed by a 3'2", action figure, basically. So, but yeah, I mean, he's a fun character.
It's my nightmare.
It's all good. I watch a Child's Play movie over a Saw sequel. So
damn, there goes my next 2 picks.
So Mike, your
Saw 5 and 6.
Your 1 to 3 slot.
Well, I have something very special planned for the 1 to 3 spot. I'm a fan of Black Sheep films, and I could sometimes see that maybe my love for a bad movie has a major nostalgic connection. But then I could also separate it and look at the film without that nostalgia, or I tried to. All right. In 1990, no, because this is a crazy one, man. In 1990, a director named Ralph Singleton made a adaptation of a Stephen King book, a short story. We all know there are tons of Stephen King adaptations. This film is almost always at the bottom of every Stephen King film adaptation. I mean the bottom, or second to bottom. Its Rotten Tomatoes score is 0 critic score, 0, and 23 audience score. Mind you, Dreamcatcher is a piece of shit, and that's 28-35. The film is Graveyard Shift.
This is the new horror from the mind of Stephen King.
This place is infested.
That might be the understatement of the year.
And the deeper you go,
When's the last time you've been to a graveyard?
the colder you feel, the hungrier it gets. Graveyard Shift. Good benefits. Early retirement. Rated R. Starts Friday, October 26th at theaters everywhere.
And I am going to sell you and anyone listening on Graveyard Shift.
Isn't that Fred Ward?
It's the guy who looks like Fred Ward. Stephen Mock is his name.
Oh.
He looks a lot like Fred Ward.
Oh, Stephen Mock, the father from Monster
Squad?
Yeah. So here is Graveyard Shift in a nutshell. It's adapted from a 17-page Stephen King short story. The short story is awesome, but obviously there's not a lot of meat there. So this is a full-blown, unapologetic monster movie. It is strictly a monster movie. It's filmed in Maine. It's the first Stephen King film to actually be filmed in Maine. Takes place in a small town. The hub of that town, the way Shawshank Prison is like the hub of Castle Rock, it's a mill, an old rundown mill. And you've got this foreman named Warwick. And Warwick runs this mill like a military guy. And he is one of the best screen villains. I absolutely love him in this film. I put him way up there as like most underrated screen villains ever. He has the most fucking insane Maine accent that he never drops, and he carries it through to the bitter end.
Bravo, Emerson! Bravo! Now we can get you that audition on Star Search.
So you've got a group of one-dimensional characters that all work in this mill, and a stranger comes into town who's gonna be your main hero, and he gets a job at this mill. The foreman puts these guys into overdrive for the 4th of July weekend, and he doesn't care about codes at all. He cuts corners. He just wants like work to come out of there so that they can all get paid, and that's the end of that. A guy comes by, an inspector, tells him, "You don't get this basement cleaned up, we're absolutely shutting you down." So Warwick's like, "We cannot do that. What I need to do is strong arm a bunch of people into working the graveyard shift to clean out this mill and get it up to code so they could do what they need to do." There just happens to be a crazy rat infestation. And for some reason, there is a gigantic rat-bat hybrid. It's never explained, but the mill is connected to an old graveyard, and you can assume that this creature has been eating the corpses that were buried there, as well as anyone that walks by it when they don't realize they're about to be lunch. So this is the setup. And then you've got Brad Dourif playing a guy who's simply called the Exterminator. And Brad Dourif has the coolest monologue that I've ever seen in a horror movie in this film. He's talking about when he was in Vietnam and what the Viet Cong would do to our soldiers with the aid of rats. And it is so emotional and eloquent and twisted that if you just took the score out and put in like dramatic, like Saving Private Ryan music, this shit would be Oscar worthy. But instead it's in this low rent killer rat bat movie. And I'm telling you, like, barely any horror film falls under what I call blue collar horror. You've basically got Graveyard Shift and maybe like My Bloody Valentine and a few other films. But this film is like total straight up blue collar people. Everybody is covered in sweat and grime. The production design of this mill, it's a real old mill. And then they did sound stages for the Creature's Lair and the graveyard. But the production design is just, it's so good. And like atmosphere, this fucking movie like drips with atmosphere. And I get that it's not this standout Stephen King story. It isn't like The Shining or anything huge like that. But from beginning to end, it is just a really fun, hardcore monster movie. And I think the only two faults of this film, in my opinion, are Brad Dourif goes out in a really stupid manner. And when you see the character and what he does in the film, you get that he's a cameo kind of, or a glorified cameo, but he really should have gone out like guns blazing, and he doesn't. That really sucks because I feel if he went out in a blaze of glory, it would amp the film up even more. And then you've got the lead character who is kind of just your everyman, and he's not that engaging, but you got to see this movie for Brad Dourif and for Warwick, because Stephen Mock as Warwick he's such a dick. The guy is like such an asshole that when you watch Lake Placid, you know how like Lake Placid's underrated and it's just this really fun comedy and everyone's sarcastic and shitty to one another. If you took that and just amped it up like tenfold, he's such an asshole and I love it. So, 1 to 3 in the morning, perfect for Graveyard Shift. It just sets you up for fun. And there's a few actors in it that you guys might recognize, like the guy who plays Wishmaster, Andrew Divoff. Yeah, he's in it, and a few other like familiar faces. But it's just so criminally underrated. And I don't want to I'll carry a torch for this movie till I'm dead. Like, it's not the greatest movie, but it's such a good fucking monster movie. And it gets no love. Like 0%. Come on.
I've only ever seen bits and pieces of it, but like based solely on your recommendation, I want to see it now.
I'm going to show you guys something crazy. Unfortunately, people listening won't be able to see it, but
he has the DVD. He's going to turn it on right now for us.
No. Do you see this? You guys see this? All right. In the end of the film, they go to the monster's lair, and it is just piles of bones. And I had the good fortune to run into a woman at a coffee shop in Maine who happened to be the on-set nurse for that film while they were shooting in her town. And each crew member was able to take home a skull from the Creature's Lair. And this amazing woman gave me that skull. So at my shop, I've got an actual skull that was used in Graveyard Shift. And when a client comes in and loves that movie, we're like instant best friends. Because I'm like, holy shit, you're one of 5 people that love that movie.
Google gobble.
But Tim, you know how you were saying like Halloween 3 really took on a life of its own to the point where it's more popular than a lot of the Halloween movies?
Yeah.
Graveyard Shift is like that film where it's not amazing. Well, it's not as good as Halloween 3, but it's really fucking good. So I urge everyone, pick up the Scream Factory Blu-ray because it's a gorgeous transfer and it's got tons of extras and it's a really, really great disc. So please watch it. It's 20 times better than The Mangler, Lawnmower Man, The Dark Tower. It's such a better film than all of those movies. So that is my Graveyard Shift 1 to 3 pick.
So that means our 1 to 3s were Demons.
Hereditary.
I scrolled down. 1 sec. What did I pick? Child's Play.
And The Graveyard Shift, which now brings us to 3 to 5. So the 3 a.m. time slot is a place for no sense. It's people by this point are napping. They're coming to as needed. It's the perfect time to throw a movie like The Visitor.
God.
So, directed by Julio Paradisi, a.k.a. Michael Paradise. It's this 1975 Italian film, came out in 1980 in the U.S., but essentially an evil force was defeated and split its essence that then got scattered around and will resurrect in various children throughout time and the world. Also, Franco Nero as a cameo as Space Jesus. But he sends John Huston down to Earth to locate the most recent vessel because they saw a vision of kind of where the evil's going to pop up next. And then the movie, it pulls the oddest like it has Glenn Ford as a detective investigating the evil little girl. We have Sam Peckinpah as the ex-husband physician of Joanne Nail. And the closer I become to this movie, the less bonkers it seems, and honestly, it starts to get easier to follow for the most part. It's as if you stayed up way too long and watched The Omen and The Bad Seed until they started blending together. But it has this...
I'm cutting you off. That's a perfect description of that film. And don't forget Lance Henriksen's in that film.
Yeah.
So is Mel Ferrer. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
But the other greatest thing about this movie is the Franco Michelizzi's score to this. Because like when they have the beginning of the movie and you started in the intro and they're kind of setting you up for what's going on, and then the music just kicks in with this like epic 70s style, like just amps you up.
Has it happened again?
Her name is Katie Collins, and she'll be 8 years old.
That I have tried to watch it many a time. This is like my equivalent of like Hardware or Dust Devil, where I've always tried to go back to it and I'm just like, I don't know, man. It doesn't click with me. And then I would watch it late at night one time and all of a sudden it just like something in my brain finally melded that it's like, oh, I get The Visitor now. Like this is a movie to enjoy. It's not weird. It's just kind of, it makes sense now. I mean, it's odd, but it's not like some Jodorowsky kind of thing or something like that.
Just glancing at the trailer, this looks like the perfect movie.
Dean, I actually think you would enjoy this a lot.
I like the tagline, how it says her body carried Satan's child. The visitor had to stop her.
Yeah. Which
at least for Franco Nero's hair, like I just have to see him.
Sadly, he's not in it as much as you would like.
Okay.
He's never in anything,
but still,
much as you would like, except for
but that's, but still, like all the images that I'm seeing in this trailer is like.
I mean, do you want to see a child with telekinetic powers take down Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when he's going for a dunk in an NBA game?
I saw like there's an NBA shot. She's got the big sunglasses on. I'm like, why are they here?
Yeah.
John Huston? My goodness.
It's a
that shot of her. I don't know is that snow or is it like ash?
I think snow.
Like it's pretty cool.
But
that film is like the dictionary definition of eclectic. It's like the cast is like, what the fuck am I reading? Like all the people are in it.
Which plus my most recent viewing of it, I know I've read a bunch of reviews and things where people talk about how like, oh, it's terrible that John Huston stooped to he probably hated being stuck in this movie. But watching it again recently, it's like the character that he plays, I feel like John Huston acting there brings a perfect kind of like a soft kindness to the role of the visitor that would end up not working if you were to kind of like bring in somebody, I don't know, anybody else if that's the case.
Yeah.
because it ends up not so much being a battle with evil. It's like there's points throughout the movie where he's just sitting down and just trying to like reason with the girl, and it just kind of makes sense rather than seeming odd, because the way he sets up the rest of the character, it's like, no, yeah, this is what I would expect from him, and we kind of like him for it. So
and you're doing deep cuts with Tim.
That's to be we expected nothing less.
So that's my 3 to 5 slot.
All right.
So Dean,
for me, coming hot off the heels of Hereditary, 3 to 5. So this movie, I feel like for 3 to 5, it's like kind of like you said, Tim. Like people are maybe napping, maybe coming in and out of it. I think you can tune in and out of this movie and just enjoy whatever's happening at the time. Because it's, I think, pretty just entertaining from start to finish, even if it's not totally scary. And that would be 1996's George Clooney's big screen, really his first role.
Batman and Robin.
From Dusk Till Dawn. Batman and Robin.
Do you want to live through this? On ancient ground, a terrifying evil has been unleashed. Now, 5 strangers are our only hope to stop it.
Oh, yeah!
On Friday, January 19th,
Richie, look out!
the showdown is on. From Robert Rodriguez, from Quentin Tarantino, from Dusk Till Dawn. Rated R.
Yeah, Robert Rodriguez is from Dusk Till Dawn, starring George Clooney, the ER man, the heartthrob. This is when he first really made his transition from small screen
hot off
to
the heels
big
to return to horror high.
Yeah, right. Right off the heels. But this movie has, I think it's just a lot of great sequences just from the opening, like robbery, and just all the way through till they get to the titty twister. So the movie, I mean, it starts with the Gecko brothers, played by George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino. I don't know I think this is his first role since Reservoir Dogs, or I guess he was in Pulp Fiction just with a brief stint, but he's in this movie a lot. I mean, he wrote it. I think the initial idea, what's the guy's name? Robert Kurtzman, was his idea, and then he got Quentin Tarantino to write it.
He's the K&B effects guy. When you hear K&B effects, he's the K.
Right. Okay. So this movie follows, the Gecko brothers. They're bank robbers. They open the movie robbing a wait, they don't show the bank robbery. No, they just start out at the convenience store where they inadvertently destroy the entire thing, take a hostage. They take cover at a local inn where they meet Harvey Keitel, who's been grieving from the death of his wife and is kind of going through a crisis of faith. I think he's a priest or a pastor or something. Am I wrong about that?
I think he's a preacher, because if he's a priest, he wouldn't have a wife.
Preacher. That's
the Catholic Church found out and killed my wife.
So he's going on a road trip with his adopted son and daughter, Juliette Lewis. And they're accosted by the Gecko brothers at this inn, and they want them to smuggle him into Mexico where they can get to safety. And they have a guy they're meeting at the Titty Twister, a bar, a strip club out in the middle of the Mexican desert. And shortly after they arrive, there's a couple good sequences just meeting like Tom Savini, little known horror
sex machine,
horror personality and effects worker, and they get into a fight. Well, first there's the first introduction I've ever realized with the Salma Hayek. I was like, that was a nice little crush that I think I had when I saw that movie in '96. Until she turns into a demonic vampire when a bar fight breaks out, and you find out these people at the roadside titty bar are vampires that prey on passerbys. So it kind of takes that, I'd say grindhouse, but just that that's where the horror really comes in. So it's revealed that it's a vampire movie. Our main, the Geckos and Harvey Keitel and family have to survive the night. against all these vampires. I think it's just like it's a lot of fun set pieces and lines and just kind of like cool movie making and characters, and you can just kind of drop in and out and like not really care what the plot wise is going on, just like checking out
because they didn't
the kills and the comedy. Yeah, right.
I know the first time I saw it, I had no idea what it was actually about. And then when it took that hard left turn and that, hey, this is a vampire movie now, not expecting that whatsoever.
Now, you see, I always watched it and caught it on TV where it's already past the vampire point. So one time I sat down with my parents and I was like, oh, like, check out this vampire movie. We sat down and then I realized like there's like 35 minutes of Tarantino in the beginning and they were
Raping
not
and
having
killing
it.
him.
Yeah. And they were like,
Jesus.
what are you making us watch? And I'm like, it's coming up, the vampire thing. And then it's like 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later. And I'm like, we'll just fast forward to the point where I see a vampire and then we'll go from there then. You're not going to miss much in terms of like plot line.
I've always found it to be a very fun movie, but it always bothered me that a bar run by vampires was full of nothing but wooden table legs and wooden chair legs. Because I feel like that would be like me having a bar where I know I'm going to rob people and try to kill them, but all the table legs and chair legs are like bladed weapons so that the people I'm trying to kill could just kill me. Like, that's the only thing that like bothered me.
My big thing with From Dusk Till Dawn, I enjoyed it, but if this place is out, like we talked about this last night, if this place is out in the middle of nowhere, if all of these patrons, all of the staff, the band are all vampires, how do they get enough foot traffic out into the middle of like I'm watching Bar Rescue and places are closing down in the middle of like a city because they don't have people coming in. How does this out in the middle of the desert get enough traffic coming through that they're like, yeah, we can feed?
Tim, you never watched the prequel where Taper came there and like remodeled everything for them and got Bar Rescue was there. It just happened 2 years before Dusk Till Dawn.
Yeah, originally it was a pirate bar, and then he was like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. That's not the demographic we're going for.
We're going to go satanic. We're going to bring some satanic and tits into it.
What you don't see is all the marketing that's going on in nearby Tijuana.
It's really word of mouth.
There's billboards like everywhere, like come to the titty twister. Oh, Cheech Marin cameo is great, by the way. He's like the greeter. It's like the greeter at the titty bar.
Yeah, it's a solid popcorn
really
movie, like for sure.
Definitely,
it's dumb as hell, but it's fun.
Yeah, yep. The band, and especially the band, just killing themselves. Like fuck you, they just like explode. They realize like they're the last, like they're gonna get killed, so they're just like they just explode. It's just out of nowhere, but it's a fun, just like jump in, jump out, wherever you are, you're gonna find something entertaining.
I'd like to interject that it's kind of interesting that we're doing our 1, 2, 3 slot, and it's actually 1:08 a.m. So we're actually talking about the films that would be playing if we were having this marathon. And I think we might be pushing probably 5 a.m. for the last one. This could happen. We could actually do it in real time.
Nick, that means we need to go real slow on this next slot.
Well, I could talk about the next one for a while.
Go for it. You're 3 to 5.
So at 3 o'clock in the morning, everyone's asleep, but my greedy ass is trying to get people in my theater by playing one of the most classic movies with the staying power of royalty for the Queen. And it is just what it is. Alien. The original 1979 one. I actually want to do an episode dedicated to Alien next year for the 4/26, the Alien quote unquote holiday. But this movie has always resonated with me so much that when I was in high school, when I finally sat down and watched it for its true appreciation of it, a lot of people compare this with its sequel, Aliens, and I just feel that it's just apples and oranges. I feel Aliens is just as good, if not better, than Alien, and I feel the same exact way in reverse. It all depends on just the context and how I'm feeling that day, and just overall the specific subject that you're talking about when comparing the two different movies together. With all of the sequels aside, these two, I feel at its core, and perfectly embody what the actual movie is about and just the whole concept and story. Whereas the first one, traveling mining ship intercepts a distress signal. They go to investigate, and the whole purpose of this theming behind it too explains that they find all these eggs. They don't know what's going on with them. One guy gets too close, and just sure enough, the egg opens up. Something latches onto the guy's face. They break quarantine, bring the guy onto their spaceship, and before they realize what's going on, the thing falls off the guy's face. They're off into space already at this point on their way home, and this guy is now infected with a parasite that eventually bursts out of his chest, grows into this massive thing when the facehugger is pretty small, and even when the thing bursts out of his chest, I don't know, it's about the size of maybe like kind of like a medium-sized snake. The thing grows into something that's over 6 feet tall. Like, I hate to combine US and metric measurements, but like, 6 feet tall, 2 meters long. This thing is massive, and it slowly picks off the entire crew. And just the way that it sets up the horror of never knowing what's around the next corner. The special effects in itself was fantastic. At no point through the whole movie do I ever like, this is kind of, well, actually there is one point I didn't like the android leader, but all the rest of it, at least, it borrows from Star Wars and owes a lot to Star Wars because of just living in that lived-in universe. You look around the ship, everything looks like it has a purpose. It looks like they actually lived there for however long they did while they're doing their work. The alien in itself, whenever it is on screen, it's not on screen often, and every time it is, they choose the specific points carefully because you never see too much of the creature, so it looks distracting, or you can start to see some of its flaws. It's always super close-ups or like blink and you miss it sort of thing, and I've always fell in love with how this movie just really left such a great impact on my life. And not only that, there's pro women, there's not a lot of female survivors or even heroes in most of the movies that we watch, and this one has one of the first ones to really make a huge name for themselves. And I always feel like Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley never had I don't feel she doesn't have as much star power as she really should.
I agree.
Ripley was written just as Ripley and not man or woman, right?
Yeah, the writers originally
the script only had last names.
Yep. They didn't think of it being like, they weren't offended, but they were caught off guard when the casting person was like, let's do a woman instead. And they're like, okay.
There's also
you're welcome.
There's an excised romance, but a hint of a romance between her and Skerritt, Tom Skerritt. It's a cool scene. Like, I like watching the movie with that scene, but it's kind of cool that like Scott cut it down to the point where there was nothing that made her like a woman along for the ride. There wasn't even like that sexual interaction. That was cool. But I love Alien.
Yeah.
I was talking about blue collar horror. And
I was just about to say, like, there's your blue collar.
How few films, and it's so funny how the ones that are tend to be really good, and Alien is pure blue collar horror because these are just mining guys like stuck in a ship. And it is like the perfect haunted house in space movie. And I agree with Nick that Alien and Aliens is like Texas Chainsaw and Chainsaw 2. They're completely different iterations of an awesome concept, but they're done so differently that the haunted house in space cannot be done better than Alien. It's perfect. It's still perfect. And it probably is my favorite horror movie trailer. It's up there as like in my top 3. If you ever watch that trailer for the original Alien, it's basically Ripley running down a claustrophobic corridor with this psychotic strobe going off and just this siren whistling. And it just gets more and more intense. And then it just goes silent and it's like Alien. So fucking good.
And that siren is so haunting too.
Yeah. But that movie is awesome. Like, people that don't have the patience, maybe. I feel like a lot of people that don't get into the first film, they're so used to Aliens. And it's like, it's Cameron doing a great war movie. But truthfully, as much as I love Aliens, after the 60 or 70th drone gets blown away, I'm really not as affected as I am by watching Alien. Alien is like the 4K Blu-ray, not to jump back to that, but to watch Alien in a home theater in the dark in 4K, it's so fucking glorious. It's an amazing movie. So great job once again, Nick.
I feel like if there was ever a movie that I would like to delete from my brain so I can watch it with no prior knowledge, like even though Alien isn't like, I like the movie, it's not like in my top 10, but it would be Alien just because I could not picture not knowing anything about this movie, sitting down in a theater and then just getting hit with like the chest burster and then getting hit with like, here's a xenomorph, and it's perfect.
And imagine that in 1979. I mean, it's like Ridley Scott is a fucking like modern master because he did that with Alien and he did it again with Blade Runner. Like, how do you have those two films in your history? Like, it's just insane.
So, Mike, I think that brings us to your 3 to 5 slot.
This is a weird one because I kept thinking 3 to 5 people are going to be like fading in and out of consciousness. So I was going to throw in an Argento movie because I think his movies are like fever dreams, but they're not necessarily Halloween horror. So I'm going with a little film that no one cared about, and it's directly related to Alien because it was written by Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, who are the creators of Alien. And this is 1981. It's called Dead and Buried.
They terrified you with the movie Alien. Now the creators of Alien take you along the strangest road you've ever traveled. A road with only one way in and no way out. The terrors of Alien have come down to Earth. Dead and Buried will take your breath away. All of it. Dead and Buried.
And it's a wonderful, quiet, like dream-like horror flick. And it's, when you think of like H.P. Lovecraft and New England horror, it's drenched in like it's even shot in a hazy way. There's a lot of grain and it's very, very misty. And the premise is so fucking weird. It's like, I won't spoil the film because the ending is excellent. But in the beginning, you meet a guy on a beach and he's taking pictures. And then this sexy chick shows up who's actually in Prince of Darkness. And she shows up and he's taking pictures of her. They start flirting. She takes her top off. She tells him that, I don't want to know your name. I'll call you Freddie. And he's like, well, you look like Elisa. So it's just these two people you meet and you're expecting them to screw on the beach because that's where the conversation's going. And then out of the blue, a bunch of regular townspeople pop up, start taking photos of the guy. They wrap him in a net, cover him in gasoline, and set him on fire. And you're like, what the fuck am I watching? And then you go to this small town called Potter's Bluff. And it's this little quiet New England town. One sheriff, the sheriff's played by this guy, James Ferrantino. He's actually a really solid actor. You get Melody Anderson, the Dale Arden from Flash Gordon. You also get the golden ticket loving grandpa from Willy Wonka. I think his name is Jack Albertson.
Yeah, Chico and the Man.
Yeah, the granddad. Yeah. Albertson. It's Albertson. But yeah, he plays this mortician named Dobbs. So you witness this murder, and then you get to your eyes, because you're going to go through this whole movie as the sheriff. And as you meet the townspeople, you start getting stranger and stranger little tidbits. They're very small, but you get them. And you're trying to figure this shit out. The whole movie is a mystery. And as it progresses, you're like, oh, wow, there's like a pre-Freddy Robert Englund. And there's all these like people that you kind of recognize. And as the movie progresses, you think you know where it's going, but you have no idea how it could be going there. And it gives you this enigmatic answer where it involves maybe science, maybe witchcraft, but it's kind of a zombie movie, but it's one of the most unique zombie movies ever. And there's a few really weak performances, and there's a couple limitations. Like there's some ADR that's kind of tacky, but if you could look past those couple of shortcomings, it's a dreamlike, creepy ride that ends with an absolutely perfect Twilight Zone kind of twist ending. And then there's a twist ending within the twist ending. And I can't tell you how much this is like a sleeper. And I really don't know why more people don't know about this movie. I mean, it's super fun. And I didn't prepare at all for this little podcast thing. I just went off movies I knew. But tonight I watched a behind the scenes about Dead and Buried. And I was actually shocked. It was an interview with Dan O'Bannon. And he openly admitted that he felt weird about being credited as the screenwriter. But Alien was so huge that this came out in 81. And the producer really wanted to like tagline across the top of the posters from the creators of Alien. So O'Bannon actually rewrote the script. He didn't write it, even though he's credited as the scriptwriter. And the people that are credited as the story, Jeff Millar and Alex Stern, they're credited in the credits as story by, but technically speaking, they did write the script. And O'Bannon rewrote it, but the producer forced him to take credit. And O'Bannon was such an awesome guy that, like, because he passed away from Crohn's, but he openly admits how shitty he felt. Like he didn't really want to take that credit, but I'm sure he polished it up a lot because it has his stamp on it. But yeah, Dead and Buried. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a super cool movie. It's just really fun.
Many years ago, you introduced this movie to me in the little box when I worked at Blockbuster, and we became friends. You came in with like a box of your recommendations of here's movies your store doesn't carry that I feel like you should watch. And it had like, we were talking Wild Zero, and it had stuff like that. And one of them was Dead and Buried. And I think that was the first one out of the box I watched. And I love it. It was a great movie.
It's such a good.
That ending, like as you go through, at least the first time I watched it, like I wasn't expecting where that whole story kind of turns to.
It's a perfect ending, and it's very, very much like an EC Comics Twilight Zone kind of ending. It's also one of Stan Winston's first special effects jobs. His first one was Gargoyles, the TV show with the gargoyles attacking people.
Yeah.
But Dead and Buried, I think, was probably his second, maybe third movie. And there's some pretty cool practical effects in that.
Yeah.
But they support the story. It's more about the performances and the story itself. But it's so bizarre, and I think Tim will agree, it's completely unique. Like, I've never seen a movie like it, and I don't think I ever will. And even the score, it almost sounds like a TV movie romance score. It's like this haunting, but like sad, almost like a romantic score. It fits the film when you watch the movie, but it makes it a little bit creepier. It's got this great old-fashioned creepiness to it. So, and I felt like that is a kind of movie that the people that are going to snooze, that's okay, because there's not a lot of loud shit in it, so it won't wake them up. But the people that are into it will be glued to the screen, and that'll get you through till 5 a.m. So that is my pick, Dead and Buried. For
I think it's also on Shudder right now.
Oh, you know what?
It's
if
worth
it is,
check. It might be.
If it's on Shudder, it's probably the Blue Underground remaster, because once again, Shudder has this hookup where they get a lot of the Blue Underground movies, and that's awesome because that company puts a lot of love into their remasters. So
I think that brings us to our number ones. And also, it is on Shudder right now. So definitely, I feel like a lot of these, if anybody's looking for Halloween picks or things to like watch leading up to Halloween or things like that, it's a fair amount of these are going to be available streaming. So that's just nice if anybody's looking for it. But we have now made it through. We are on our 5 to 7 slot. The night is over. The dawn is coming. So I figure we deserve a lighter fare, maybe a movie with a happy ending. And I picked a childhood favorite, 1987's The Gate.
I'm calling the police.
Demons. No.
The Gate.
Oh.
So The Gate has always been a childhood favorite. It pulls a bit from my entire night. So it's 80s nostalgia, check. Supernatural portal to hell, check. Strange happenings in a neighborhood, check. Reality becomes unquestionable, check. So it's a little bit of all of my movie themes leading up into this. But it's a boy and his friend find a hole in their backyard. They find witchcraft in a hole. They find this hole in their backyard. They end up finding it's like a gate to hell or other devious realm. And naturally they play with it. It ends up kind of unleashing all sorts of wackiness on the house while their parents are away. But it's fun practical effects as far as like these little demon creatures and
Minions.
Yeah.
They're called minions.
Like,
I don't know.
I always love the look of those, especially when they show like how they're doing the sizing differences and all of that. But it's fun, kind of like Harryhausen stop animation on them while having this entire thing taking place just at the house. Which, granted, they have some day scenes and whatnot, but for the most part, it's kind of overnight. And then we end up having the kids and their sister and their friend like locked into the house, trying to figure out what's going on. And then you think that they figured the problem. You think they solved everything. The friends finally can get out and they go home. And it's just the brother and sister and his friend at the house. And then all of a sudden, all of it starts back up again. And you have the last third of the movie. So it's kind of all of these layered parts. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier with John Dies at the end, how it's like, you think it's the end, and then you're only halfway through. You have this entire back half that still keeps kind of hitting at that point. But it's definitely a fun one to kind of wind down on because it's a lot of intense moments. But for the most part, like it's kind of ends on a nice note. The sun comes out, everybody, the day is over, they've survived the night kind of deal. So it's The Gate. I don't see a lot of it's stuff that I talk about with a lot of people, but I don't necessarily see it popping up on lists a lot, at least myself. So I always like to throw The Gate out there whenever I can.
It is
maybe
weird.
Not The Gate too.
It's weirdly underrated.
Yeah,
or not maybe underrated because people that know it like it. It's unknown, like in a strange way. Because Steven Dorff, it's like tiny little Steven Dorff. He's so young in it.
Yeah,
you really get like a super fun movie. And once again, it's from an era where the budget was so low. The director had such an insane idea that he wanted to bring to fruition. And that's one of those movies where they were left alone with their budget. And every effects guy, because it was split up between a lot of different people, they all did more than they needed to. We're talking like staying up late nights, working on shit for barely any money. And it gives you way more than you would ever really be able to get. But it makes the movie work. I always found it hysterical how no one reacts the way we would react if someone levitated in front of us. That is the strangest reaction to a levitation. It's like, shut up, nerd, get out of here. And it's like, wait a minute. The kid just levitated.
That kid just flew through the air and
how is
shattered
that
a light.
not? You're worried about listening to music and smoking cigarettes and drinking at a party? But yeah, that movie
was not a part of the trick.
Super fun.
And that's even before the demonic stuff starts happening. Right. It's just like they're just having a party early in the movie and a kid levitates and hits the ceiling. And everybody's like, whoa, crazy, right?
Right.
And then they go back to doing what they're doing.
I think when that workman falls and turns into the minions, dude, that's like, that's a classic 80s moment.
It's chef's kiss.
It really is. I don't think that Psycho Gorman, that movie, when I watched it, I was just like, this is sort of like a new version of The Gate in a weird way, because it has a lot in common with The Gate. But yeah, it's a fun flick.
Yeah,
and Terry's awesome.
yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, why is when Terry is like lip syncing with the record, like that scene just like sticks with me. I don't know why.
Because we've all done it, right? Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. But his character and his face and just the way he lip syncs, I don't know, it just like burns. That scene's burned in my mind. Out of that movie.
When the parents are like, we don't really want you hanging out with Terry. He's not a good influence. And I watched the movie and I'm like, no, yeah, I could kind of see that.
Yeah. They're all like, Terry's mom died. And when that happened, he's just not right in the head since then.
It broke Terry.
Yeah. I hope Terry is alive and well. I hope he's doing well and hanging out with a few other like choice supporting characters that are doing well.
Yeah.
Because when I found out Horace died from Monster Squad early, he died young.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that just sucked. He died of like some heart condition or something. But yeah, I love Terry and the whole movie. Whole movie's fun.
I think the special effects for that. Did you ever see the movie I, Madman?
Fuck yeah. I just played that for someone recently. They were like blown away. Like, how have I never even heard of this movie?
Because like the creature at the end of it, there's like the creature that pops up that really reminds me of the little minions from The Gate.
Oh, the Jackal Boy? Yeah, that Jackal Boy.
So that is my 5 to 7. So Dean is me. 5 to 7. So we had From Dusk Till Dawn. It's a come and go as you please movie. You're taking your naps. I don't know why. I just wanted to end this with a bang. I think you need a pick-me-up. You need a coffee. And in movie form, for me, much to Tim's chagrin, I'm going with Peter Jackson's Brain Dead, a.k.a. Dead Alive, as it's known in North America.
If you are easily offended, cover your right eye now. However, if you enjoy a good, broad-minded laugh, cover your left eye now.
I thought you were a trustworthy boy, but going out behind my back with that oily shop girl, kissing and cuddling in public. But, Mum, she's experienced.
Lionel loves his new girlfriend. Almost as much as he loves his mother.
Mum!
But Lionel's mother is different.
Your mother ate my dog!
Not all of it. She's not very well.
Your mother's dead, Lionel.
Brain dead. It's all right. You can look now. Brain dead.
I only knew Peter Jackson when the Lord of the Rings, came out, and then that hit me at a ripe age. And just looking back through his catalog, that was you mentioned this earlier, Mike. Seeking out his movies, just like learning that he started in like splatstick and just like kind of gory, goofy horror. First I found Bad Taste, which I really enjoy, but this movie is fucking crazy.
It is magnum opus. It is.
It's just there's just so much going on in this movie. It's about this kind of mama's boy in New Zealand, falls in love with a girl. He lives with his overbearing mother, who essentially controls his life. Falls in love with a girl and goes on a date with her. And she stalks them, follows them on this date because she's overbearing. And she's bitten by this monkey, which earlier in the movie was captured from none other than Skull Island, because Peter Jackson loves King Kong, as we obviously understand. this monkey that was like raped by tree monkeys and plague-carrying rats makes this weird amalgamation creature, and it's brought to a zoo, and then and eventually bites his mother. And they just bring her home to recover, but she slowly dilapidates and dies and becomes a zombie. And he decides to keep her. Instead of telling anybody, he just like locks her in the basement. She eats her caretaker. She becomes a zombie, and essentially just like the bodies pile up in his basement. And I don't know, it's just a wild movie that culminates in one of the like most gorily awesome sequences that I think I've ever seen. I think most people have ever seen.
What's your favorite line, Dean, you like to say?
Well, there's a priest in this movie that he knows kung fu.
Oh, we all know it.
He tells the bad guys, I kick ass for the Lord.
I think this is the next movie on my list of ones that didn't click with me, but I will watch it to try to figure out like what finally does mesh with me, because I know you love it so much, and I've tried so many times, and for some reason every time I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Tim, how does Dead Alive not click with you? How? Like how?
I think it's just for somebody who just put The Visitor on my 3 to 5, I'm about to say it's too over the top.
Oh my God, no. It's such a glorious exercise in excess. Like it really is. Like, oh my God.
Yeah,
like
it really is.
when he's running away and just he's doing like the Three Stooges slip up on the blood, just running and going nowhere. Like, oh my God.
Don't watch it by yourself. I think all of us need to watch it at the same time.
You're probably right.
Because you get the same enjoyment out of it. If I saw Troll 2 by myself, I wouldn't have liked it as much compared to seeing it in a group.
No, yeah.
I think you're right. And I also think most of us picked almost all crowd-based movies, which I think just shows that we love cinema as a group form, like seeing it in a theater with people. And a lot of the movies we all picked play really well in a theater with other people to kind of go on that journey with you. Like Starship Troopers is much more fun in a theater with a shitload of people than watching it by yourself. I don't know why I threw Starship Troopers out there, but I remember seeing Starship Troopers in the theater, and it was just a fun experience, So
yeah, another underrated movie.
It's just so proud of how gross it is. The movie itself it just layers it on as much as it can.
It's an Academy Award winner.
And there's zombie sex. There's a zombie baby that results from the sex. Like,
and then you've got like Paquita as the straight girl. She's like us. She's like this normal person thrown into this fucking insanity and just observing it all happening. So
she happily joins the fray at the end of the movie.
Dean, if you liked that, what you might like is if you've ever seen the movie Evil Ed.
That sounds familiar.
But it has a very similar feel. It's about an editor who his job is to go through and censor horror movies that are too gory or have like bad stuff in it. And then he starts to like lose touch with reality and go crazy. And he starts seeing like characters in his day-to-day and like monsters and things. But it feels extremely similar to the whole kind of like the comedy and the tone and whatnot of Brain Dead.
It's weird that you mentioned that, because Evil Ed to me doesn't connect like Brain Death doesn't to you. And I want it to. I want to love Evil Ed. And I just feel like the comedy misses the mark for me more than it hits. And I get what they're doing. I kind of just wish Peter Jackson directed it. I think I would like it more.
Yeah.
It's not a bad movie. But man, it's like they both are zero budget. And Bad Taste doesn't feel zero budget, but man, Evil Ed feels super low budget. Like it just doesn't, there's none of that grandeur that Jackson manages to conjure with that. And it's so bizarre to me because like you watch those two films, Bad Taste and Brain Dead, and then a few years later, he made Heavenly Creatures, which is a stunningly awesome drama. Like I love Heavenly Creatures. It's so fucking good.
Right.
It really shows what a diverse filmmaker he is.
Yeah.
And I recently revisited the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I do often, and it never gets bad. It's a bit long in some spots, but when you watch the theatrical cut, you miss really great sequences. So it's like this double-edged sword. When you watch the extended cut, you get those cool sequences, but you also get some boring shit that you really don't need in there. But in the case of The Hobbit, they recolor timed the entire Hobbit trilogy to match the color timing of Lord of the Rings. And they also retextured and relit some of the CGI creatures. So watching The Hobbit, I still think it should be 2 movies, not 3. But watching The Hobbit in 4K remastered to match the look and feel of Lord of the Rings is a much more enjoyable experience. And I actually like the movies a lot more than I used to. So
is that a 4K only cut? Or is that on the extended ones?
Well, the 4K cuts are, I think, only extended. I think they're only the extended versions. Mainly because if you're that much of a nerd that you're going to rebuy the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies again in 4K, they probably assume you want to see, and they're such dense films that they're actually broken up on 2 fucking 4Ks. It's amazing. I'm glad they kept the bit rates up and did that, but it is a little weird to be watching a 4K Blu-ray and have to get up and switch it to the second disc. But that's a minor quibble. I'll take.
You hear the noise and it's like, please turn to side 2.
Yeah.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.
It's like Titanic or Braveheart VHS tapes.
So, Dean, I will give your movie another shot.
You should. Wait till I'm there. We'll watch it together.
Okay. We'll wait till I'm there.
Tim, if you just buy a few tacos and pop some good popcorn, I don't see how you can't enjoy it. It's just fun. It's like a fun movie. And it's so quickly paced that any shit you're not feeling, it'll be gone in like 40 seconds, so don't worry about it.
Yeah.
That should have been your follow-up to Hereditary.
So much happens. Yeah. Opposite pace.
So, Nick, your 5 to 7 slot.
I don't know what to do for this one because the Xenomorph has 5 life cycles. So I just figured, all right, you know what? This is coming to an end, and just like death, everything must come to an end. And the best movie I could think of with death would just be Final Destination.
I saw Death's plan. It's not finished. I know who's next.
What are you, God now?
Final Destination. Rated R.
I think it might be my weakest pick out of the entire lot, but the first one, it was pretty groundbreaking when it came. Well, not groundbreaking, but I mean, it was really popular. It was a different idea.
Yeah,
it was unique.
That's a good concept.
Yeah, and I think it worked really well. I rewatched it again recently, and I think it held up pretty well. I'm only talking about the first one. The sequels are just as good as the Saw ones. So,
if you watch the last Final Destiny, I think it does that stupid thing where it's like, what's the sequel? The Final Destination? But it's actually like number 6 or 7 or something like that.
I could never figure out the
Really,
title. I don't know the title of the last one.
Yeah, I think it's just
really
The
stupid.
Final Destination.
Yeah, it might be. It might be called The Final.
I know at some point there is a The Final Destination, unless that's like the one before, but it's, I hate when people do that.
After the third,
it's like Predators, and The Predator. Like
after the third Fast and the Furious movie, I don't know which one is which anymore. Because at least, Too Fast and
Furious, Fast. We are Fast and Furious.
I just wish there was a way to put Mary Elizabeth Winstead in the first Final Destination, because then I'd never need to watch any of the sequels. I would just watch the first one, but I always watch the one with her in it as well, because she's just a goddess. So I think it's the third one she's in or something, but I usually put the discs in to be like, which one's this? Oh, cool. That's the one with Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
So 2 things then. You should check out the movie Kate, where she's like a John Wick style hitman assassin who gets poisoned and she tries to take revenge before the poison kills her. But also, the last Final Destination would interest you, Nick, is the whole movie sets up like a similar thing of the death coming and the design and taking them out based on this like bridge collapse or whatever it was. And then at the end, they're like, okay, like we beat this. We should go on that vacation we always talked about. And the guy buys tickets with like his girlfriend to Paris, and they get on the plane, and then all of a sudden he sees Devon Sawa or whatever like screaming on the plane.
Yep.
And then that's the one that crashes.
No, I saw it. It was past.
Oh, okay.
Nick, I sat through that one. Well, I did. I sat through that one, and I was just, what am I watching?
After 6 movies, you feel like you owe it to it. Just like, it's the last one, I'll watch it, And I did, and just...
I mean, it just gets drunk on its own shtick. Like, how can we create these fun deaths? Like, right, that's all it is.
That is,
by that point, that's exactly what it became.
It's Rube Goldberg machines.
I mean, Yeah, and it's cool in the first movie.
Yeah.
Like it's Sean William Scott. American Pie did come out before this movie, but I wonder if it was made like
at the same time.
At the same
Oh, it
time,
was just like shelved
yeah,
for a bit.
yeah, because he has a much smaller role in this one, and
That dude
but everybody
disappeared. Can we talk about that for a second? Where
There's a
is
Snapchat video that covered that because, like, where are they now? And it's mentioned Sean William Scott, and I love him as an actor. I always felt he was underappreciated outside of Stifler. Him in Evolution, I fucking loved it.
He was excellent in Role Models. So funny in that.
You know, take it however you like with Dukes of Hazzard. That's a cult favorite of mine. I really like that movie with Johnny Knoxville too. Yeah. And just his acting in it is, I mean, it's not Oscar worthy, but I don't care. I had fun the whole time he's on screen. And that's at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
I've never seen them, but have you seen the movie Goon and like Goon 2 or something like that, where he's like the hockey guy? But I know that the sequel I think was more recent.
Goon's pretty good.
But that's the last thing I remember.
Goon is good. Goon 2 was 2017. I'm on his IMDb. He's in a TV series. I don't know what it is. Welcome to Flatch?
That title ensures that's a one-season show.
It's definitely got one season.
Probably not going to get a second one. Plus, all four of us, no one's even heard of it. So,
but he is working still. But I don't know what the hell.
I mean, then again, also with the money he has from American Pie and all these other things, he can also just choose like, yeah, I don't really need to be doing projects every year if that's the case. Like I can live off the Stifler money.
He doesn't have anything big on the horizon. It looks like so.
Until maybe another American Pie.
He'll come back.
Maybe he'll show up on Doom Patrol and he could hang out with another guy.
I was just gonna say Brendan Fraser. He could pull him up.
Hey, everyone, go watch Doom Patrol.
I really should.
It's a blast.
But Final Destination.
So Final Destination to close out your night, which brings us to Mike. Bring us home.
I am bringing it home with what I consider to be one of the most fun, perfect horror movies ever made. And it's the only thing I'd want to usher people out of the theater with. George Romero, Tom Savini, Stephen King, EC Comics, Creepshow, 1982.
Tales of horror that will give you the creeps. This is going to be extremely painful, Mr. Verrill. The most fun you'll ever have being scared. Creepshow, rated R.
Now playing at a theater near you.
It's just perfect. Like Creepshow.
Yeah.
I can't, I mean, I'm just going to be this like gushing fool talking about how it's like a perfect storm of awesome. Like none of the stories are really amazing except for The Crate, I think is probably the best story. Yeah. But it's a love letter to pre-code horror comics of the 50s and 60s. And it's a screenplay written by Stephen King specifically for this film because he wanted to work with George Romero. And I think it's Romero at the height of his creative point in his life where he just had fun with it, you know? And you have like a husband and wife team. This guy, Cletus Anderson, he was the production designer, and his wife was Barbara Anderson. She did all the costumes and everything. You've got an awesome cast where they managed to get all these great actors like Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau, Fritz Weaver, Leslie Nielsen, E.G. Marshall, Ed Harris is in it. Ted Danson is in it. Like Ted Danson was working on the film when he got a call to go back to audition for a role he was excited about for a TV show that became Cheers. You know, it's just 5 weird stories about revenge and redemption and assholes getting their just desserts. And it feels like a comic book. It's just so fun. Like I cannot stress how it's never boring because it's 5 stories. So if you're bored, it's going to be over in a minute and you get a brand new story. And then there's even a wraparound with Tom Atkins and Stephen King's son, Joe King, playing the little kid in it. Nothing makes me think Halloween more than like Creepshow and like Season of the Witch, like double feature kind of thing. So I figure if I open with Season of the Witch and you end it with Creepshow, everyone's going out to get a giant breakfast at like, you know, a diner to talk about what a weird fucking movie Creepshow was. That was awesome. Because, you know, and without even trying, I realized at the end that I ended up picking, see if I grab my pages that I wrote the names on. It's like I opened with like a witch movie, and then you've got a vampire movie, then you've got a werewolf movie, then you've got a giant monster movie, then you've got a zombie movie, and then you end it with an anthology. So I didn't mean to do that, but I just sort of picked the best films that I thought were very different from one another. And yeah, I mean, so that's Creepshow. And then as a weird alternate reality thing, if I had carte blanche to pick well-known shit, I was trying to pick things that aren't so obscure but aren't played to death. If I was just planning, if someone said like, make the best creme de la creme Halloween overnight movie marathon, what I had written down was Nightmare on Elm Street, The Thing, the original Halloween at midnight, The Shining, The Exorcist, and then you wake up to the sun with Dawn of the Dead. Those were like the ones that everyone has on every list. And I'm thrilled that I got to hang out with you guys because we all picked really cool movies and not a single repetition, not even one. And I think that's awesome. Like I was expecting one or two people to maybe pick Halloween because it's a great movie to play on a Halloween marathon, but we all went in different corners of horror. And it sort of shows you how broad the concept of horror is. Like Contagion is like a Steven Soderbergh movie, but it's a horror movie when you really think about it. And it's so close to David Cronenberg's Rabid. They're very different, but they're also like the same concept. And that's what I love about this. So I had a great night doing this with you guys. We killed like 4 or 5 hours like it was nothing. I feel like I've been sitting here for maybe a half hour, like maybe, and we've been talking since like 10 o'clock. That's insane.
It takes a lot of self-control to avoid as many tangents as I know probably can happen with all of us, especially going off the rails with other suggestions, just because it's fun to be able to be like, you are the people that would know if I say like, oh, have you checked out this movie? Everybody should know about that movie. So it's been a blast. I know we're coming in just under 4 hours.
Tangents are okay if we weren't talking about specifically 24 different movies.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm sorry for the only.
I want to chime in about Creepshow 2 and the travesty that is Creepshow 3 and the TV show. But again, like we can't do all this in one shot. So I will say that Creepshow 2 were actually the leftover stories from Creepshow 1. And it's sad that you only get 3, and they also had a much lower budget. So as much as I enjoy Creepshow 2, it's just not as good. It's not as well-rounded as the first Creepshow. So, but yeah, what do you guys think of that? Have you seen that movie or what?
I did. That's another classic I have not.
Creepshow's a favorite.
Very aware of it, but just never sat down to watch it.
Personally, the only story I don't like from Creepshow is, what is it, They're Coming to Get You? The E.G. Marshall one?
They're creeping up on you.
Oh, they're creeping up on you. To me, if I was able to swap the raft into Creepshow 1 and push that out, I would be fine with it.
Yeah.
Oh, also the with the one with Stephen King, the Geordie one, which evidently originally Tom Atkins wanted to audition for that story, and he's like, Stephen King wants to play the role, and he kind of wrote the movie, so.
And
so
to
that's
this
when
day,
he did the wraparound.
King's embarrassed by his Geordie Verrill performance. He thinks it's way too broad and overacting. But I disagree, because like if you ever have read a weird science story or any of those 50s sci-fi comedy ones, they're so goofy that I think it was pitch perfect. Like his ridiculous portrayal of Geordie Verrill is exactly what it would have been if it was a comic book story. So it's a great film. And I would say to both of you that haven't seen it, like, it's just so fun that you'll be happy you watched it. Just to see Leslie Nielsen killing it as a villain. Like, he's so known as the comedy guy. In his early life, like he was in Forbidden Planet and stuff where he played more of a leading man. But I can't think of a Leslie Nielsen film where he played the bad guy. And man, he chews up the scenery as the bad guy. And by getting all of these great actors together, they're all trying to maybe not one up each other, but keep up. And what you get is this like magical little time capsule of like people in their golden years and then some young up and comers all being in this film that was written by King and directed by Romero. And it's about something they love that they grew up with. So you're kind of watching pillars of the horror community paying a homage, that fucking word, to like the artists and the writers that scared them when they were little. And I think that's a really special film in and of itself. And plus me being 46 and seeing it in the theater, I saw that shit way too young, and it just made an indelible impression on me. Like, there's just so many things about that. And the score is absolutely one of the best fun horror movie scores ever. I listen to that score all the time. It's killer. So yeah, that's that.
Also, I saw you two laughing for the Leslie Nielsen as a villain, because our very first movie we covered was Surf Ninjas, where he played Colonel Chi, the evil emperor.
The cybernetic.
I completely forgot that was
cybernetic samurai.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
absolutely menacing.
Yeah, Creepshow is just like this perfect love letter to all of that time in comics and all of these like great people. Just that one perfect moment of all of these different things coming together, like writer-wise, actor-wise, director-wise, that definitely check out Creepshow. If nothing else, for Ed Harris's dancing in the first bit. But
yeah. It also should be noted that I think the TV show, I have never wanted to love a TV show more than the Creepshow TV show. I think it misses the mark so consistently that it blows my mind. I've watched every one of them, and I'm like, there's only 3 or 4 worthwhile stories out of this entire show. And when you watch the opening, the music is so unmemorable. And the animation they chose to go with is this low rent. Think of the movie Spawn. It's like that bad of CGI. It's such crappy, like modern looking, like horror art is what they're going for, but it doesn't capture any of what I think makes Creepshow great. And it bothered me because Romero wanted to make Creepshow into a TV show, and Laurel Entertainment owned the name. And so he ended up producing Tales from the Dark Side. But Tales from the Dark Side was actually supposed to be Creepshow as a TV show. So whatever. But I could talk about Creepshow for like 3 hours. So
we'll do that as another one. Also, Tales from the Dark Side, the episode of Cuddy Black Sow.
Yes.
Terrorized me as a child.
Oh my.
And I thought I made it up until eventually I got the box set and I watched it and I was like, oh my God. So go watch that too. That's our, if that was our 5 to 7, this is our 7 to 7:30. You watched that one episode of Tales from the Dark Side. So this is just coming in under 4 hours, but just to kind of recap any of our marathons, if anybody's looking to check them out at home, I had the WNUF special, The Terrified, Prince of Darkness, Demons, The Visitor, and The Gate.
I started with The Cabin in the Woods, then It Follows, Troll 2, Hereditary, From Dusk Till Dawn, and Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive in North America.
We have mine starting with Night of the Living Dead, The Thing, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, Child's Play, Alien, and wrapping up with Final Destination.
And I kicked off the evening with Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, followed by Fright Night, 1985, the original one, John Landis's An American Werewolf in London for our mid-evening morsel, and then Graveyard Shift at 1 a.m, and then Dead and Buried for anyone that was still awake, and then we ended it with Creepshow, 1982. So,
okay, gang, that wraps up our Halloween special, and we hope you check out some of the films and let us know what you think, as well as let us know what your Halloween marathon might be on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Screen Refresh, or shoot an email to screenrefresh@gmail.com. Thanks again, Mike, for taking the time to join us and getting everyone in the Halloween spirit. Is there anywhere you want to plug? Is there anywhere you want people to follow you at?
If people want to follow the art stuff that I do, tattoos and sculptures and things like that, my Instagram is probably the best way to see it. And that's at Falcigno Art, F like in fright, ALCIGNO ART. Thank you very much for having me. I had a great night. This is like, I don't know, it almost felt like we were really hanging out watching these movies. Just because we've seen a lot of them. It was like, it was a really cool thing. And I appreciate the call because, yeah.
Whenever your schedule allows, I'm down for more.
I'll be back. If you deem me worthy after cutting through all the bullshit I was spewing. So.
So that's it from us. So for Nick and Dean, this is Tim. Thank you for everyone listening and having a great year, and catch us next on Screen Refresh, the first Monday of the month. Have a happy Halloween.
It's still running. Stop it, please. For God's sake, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please, stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.